Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. We are now before the last one of the three-player games, and for that video I'm actually not alone. I'm joined by one of my opponents in the group, by Cogito, who also has his own YouTube channel. Welcome, Cogito.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's great to see a game from different perspectives, and then also the viewers see the reasoning behind your moves, maybe some knowledge about your military cards. I think those joint commentaries are always very interesting. I'm very happy that we managed to find a day to record one of the games together.
Yeah, same here. I'm happy that you offered to do a joint commentary. It's my first time, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, you of course have your own YouTube channel where you also analyze your own games. You will find it linked in the description of the video, so definitely check that out. You are doing the videos now since some months, right?
Yeah, a few months ago I started in the second round of the World Championships. I've only been playing through the ages pretty recently. I started last year and competitively at about the middle of last year. Um and so I thought both to sort of analyze my games to get better and also because I wanted to practice making videos, I just more or less, heavily inspired by you, started making my own videos. I guess I skipped the first round of the World Championships and started the second. So I've mostly been covering World Championship games so far. I did my third round Australian Open game too. I want to do the future ones of those, however long it lasts on that tournament. And I'm also thinking of doing some other games. Maybe I'm in Platinum League of Intermezzo right now, so I might do those games. We'll see. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far. I feel like going over my games has really helped me see areas of improvement and where I made mistakes and can get better. So yeah, I'd like to keep going as long as I can.
Yeah, I think covering and analyzing that many of my games definitely also helped me a lot to improve. And yeah, and I also think it's great to have more through the ages content. I think for a while I was basically the only one doing some videos, but at the moment we have a lot of variety, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, Sandwhale has started making a lot of videos recently, and some others too. So it's like we're getting a little bit of a renaissance, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's very nice. And now let's get back to the game or to the standings, because this is the last one of the three-player games. At the moment, Jantarek has already finished all of his three-player games, has 5 games finished and 15 points, is in the lead, meaning that for all of the other players that are now involved in the three-player game, it's a very important game to maybe keep the chances for the first place alive. I think for all of the players, a win would be very important. The standings are relatively close, and yeah, so quite an interesting group so far, I would say. And yeah,
Yeah, it's been quite intense.
yeah, all right. So now with having seen those standings, we can hop right into the game.
All right.
All right, here we are in the three-player game. I'm playing in third position, Cogito in second position, Gandin in first position. And first of all, we can take a look at leaders and wonders. We have some theater synergy in H3 with Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich, the Hollywood, but no Fleming. We have some lab or science leaders with Einstein, Steve Jobs, and Marie Curie. There's also the space flight, the Manhattan Project. We have Churchill, Gandhi, and the Manhattan Project for the military, and also the Red Crosses there is an interesting wonder to have in mind. In H2, we have some big colonization payoff with the Suez Canal and James Cook. We have some culture leaders with Anthony Gaudi, Shakespeare, and Darwin. We have Maria Theresa, but no ocean liner service. Newton is there, but no Nobel. Railroad and Harvard College are strong wonders. And then in H1, we have no military action leader. We have Barbarossa and Nostradamus, Genghis Khan to help with the strength. Saladin is a very solid leader. We have Columbus, maybe a Barbarossa for a good colonization game. Also Eleanor. We have Gutenberg, but no Leonardo. We have the Great Wall and the Medici Castle, so the two wonders that help with the strength, Universitas but no Silk Road, and then the St. Peter's Basilica to help with the happy faces. Is there anything in particular that you find interesting in this mix of leaders and wonders, or that you noticed?
Yeah, I would say as a general strategy, it doesn't seem like any one particular path, whether it be theaters or science or military, is super heavily supported. So it's more of like a you want to be flexible. The colonization strategy maybe is the one that jumps out the most as being notable. There's a lot of support for that. The other thing I like looking at is how many age one leaders like being elected earlier, and how many are more transitional. It seems that most of these age one leaders lean more on the transitional, prefer to be elected late in age one direction. So I think that's notable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely true. Right, so let's see. Gandin is in first position and he starts with taking the library, which seems to be a very logical choice for him. Not a lot of great alternatives. He doesn't want to go for a lot of randomness with maybe going for Caesar. And then we have your turn. And yeah, so what were your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I think that on my first glance, I was leaning towards taking the Colossus. As I mentioned, there's a lot of colonization synergy, also a fair amount of military, well, Angus and Barbarossa in Age 1, so it felt like a potentially strong Colossus game. But what I was concerned about the Colossus is which leader I might get with it. I was kind of expecting, especially if I took the Colossus, that you would probably take Confucius, and if you didn't, that Ganon would probably take Confucius. And while I would like to get Caesar with Colossus, he'll be discarded before my next turn. So if I took Colossus, then I thought that a potentially likely line was you and Gandin getting Hippocrates and Confucius, and me getting Cleopatra, whom I think I'm higher on Cleopatra than average, but I think she's not great with the Colossus. Because it's only 2 stages and each one costs 3 rocks. So I was a little worried if I took the Colossus about that I might not get a good leader to pair with the Colossus. Um, and so that's why I ultimately decided to go with Hippocrates instead, even though I don't think this is a great Hippocrates like set of age one leaders, because as mentioned, most of them like being elected late, and Hippocrates likes leaving early. I think that of the leaders on the row, he's well, not the best one available because Confucius is there, but I'm not getting Confucius. And so at least taking him gives me like a solid leader that I know I have. In addition, if you look at the cards left in the AJ deck, the leaders left, well, Sun Tzu would be nice to have, but there's also pyramids in the deck that I could potentially get as a wonder. And even if I don't get pyramids and Colossus is taken by you, then I could get Acropolis, and I think this could be a pretty good Acropolis game with all the theater synergy in Age 3. So I thought that even though the Colossus was probably the best, maybe the best card available for me in a vacuum, the issues with getting a good leader with him were strong enough that I preferred taking the leader, and I thought that the Acropolis would be a good enough consolation prize, and maybe I could even get the pyramids out of the deck for my wonder.
Yeah, I think Hippocrates sounds like a perfectly solid choice, and yeah, there will likely be some cards revealed, so there's definitely a chance for the pyramids. But as you said, Acropolis should also be a perfectly fine wonder. Then it's my turn, and I thought about maybe just taking Confucius, getting a very strong leader for myself. But I, at the end, thought that yeah, with there being some big colonization synergy in the game, I wanted to have the Colossus here, and can take the Colossus either together with Caesar or yellow card. I definitely thought about just going for Caesar and Colossus, maybe going for either big strength push or maybe having the chance to draw some colonies, maybe move the deck forward very quickly and then have a chance to get some nice value out of the Colossus. On the other hand, I'm playing in third position. I think such a start is maybe a bit stronger when you play in first position and have an advantage because you can build your military and all the stuff maybe one turn earlier than your opponents. So while I think maybe just going for Colossus and Caesar could be potentially fine, I decided against it. First of all, I thought that maybe there's a chance I could still get Confucius at my next turn because you have now already taken Hippocrates as your leader, and for Gandin, he could of course go for Confucius, but he is available only for 2 civil actions for him, while Cleopatra is available for 1 civil action and works very nicely together with the library. And because of that, I thought it's not unlikely that Gandin maybe will just go for Cleopatra. I definitely thought maybe he will still go for Confucius, but I thought I might have a chance to go for Confucius, then the deck will also move forward very quickly, but I just also get some signs out of him, and I wanted to keep this option open for myself in case Confucius is taken away. Then out of the remaining leaders, maybe Sun Tzu could be the most interesting, who also synergizes nicely with the Colossus and can really help me setting up for a colonization game. Homer and Moses would both be fine leaders. If I get them for one civil action, it would not be too bad, but I was hoping that if it should happen that Confucius is taken away, that maybe Sun Tzu should be available. So I go for the Colossus here, and when I watched the replay, I was actually surprised that I take the cultural heritage here. Normally, I think when
And
we
me
just...
too, Will.
Yeah, yeah. Normally I think when I just think about what to get out of the yellow card, I maybe should just take the frugality to be the most action efficient, especially in third position. Some cards from H1 will be available very early. So I was a bit surprised. And I'm actually not totally sure what my concrete reasons were. I think I was just afraid, or I wanted to increase the chances that if Confucius is indeed taken away by Gandin, that I then will have a leader available for one civil action. However, with taking the cultural heritage, now I make it that Cleopatra is discarded guaranteed. But maybe I had the same feelings as you, that Cleopatra together with the Colossus is just not the greatest combination. And I think probably that was just my reason. But it also makes it more likely that the pyramids come out of the deck for you. So I think at the end, maybe I should just go with frugality or maybe stockpile to help finishing the Colossus more quickly. Maybe I had another reason in mind that I don't remember any longer, but I think maybe I just wanted to improve the chances to get a leader if Confucius is taken away, ideally Sun Tzu. So that is I think the reason behind it, but I'm not sure if that is actually the correct choice here.
Yeah, I think that your turn makes sense. I think either Confucius or Colossus plus a one civil action card are both fine decisions, but I think the Colossus letting you take another card with it maybe leans it over the edge. Skipping Caesar is probably fine. I think not just Sun Tzu, but the other two potential AJ leaders in the deck also pair well with Colossus. Culture Heritage may be questionable. The reason this, I think, either frugality or stockpile. The extra food would also help a lot with the military push, so that might be the issue. I think taking Caesar would also be justifiable here. I agree, a bit worse in third position, but also Caesar plus Colossus is a very strong combination and could really pressure the opponents quite quickly. So I think either taking Caesar or taking a yellow card are both justifiable here. I agree with you that the culture heritage may be a bit questionable, although it does make sense that, especially since Sun Tzu would be such a strong leader for you, I think that's a somewhat justifiable reason to want to reveal an extra card.
Yeah, so that I think is at the end a fine pick. However, at the end, maybe it doesn't work out too greatly or too good for myself, because thanks to taking the cultural heritage, now the pyramids will be available for one civil action for you. So at the end, taking this cultural heritage maybe sadly helped you a little bit more than it helped myself, but there was definitely a chance that it also could have maybe helped myself a bit more. Gandin indeed makes the decision to go for Confucius for two civil actions, isn't willing to go for Cleopatra, but at least I do see Sun Tzu coming down the row. Engineering Genius at least stays in two civil actions for you, so maybe it could be at least a bit costly for you to take it, and so that I was at the end somewhat fine with seeing this outcome, apart from you maybe getting the pyramids for one. And then we are at your turn.
Yeah. I will say, if I were Gandin, I probably would have taken Cleopatra for one. I mean, for one instead, especially since Cleopatra pairs so well with Library. But I understand valuing Confucius higher. So yeah, I definitely wanted to take the Pyramids for one, even though I think this is a good Acropolis game. I think the Pyramids is just a much stronger wonder overall, and it allows for more flexibility. If there was like an overwhelming amount of theater synergy with like Bach in the game too, the Acropolis could be considered more heavily, but since there isn't, I think Pyramids is definitely better, leaving flexibility open. I think the other interesting choice after building the mine then is, do I want to elect Hippocrates and probably increase my population? But I think taking the Engineering Genius here is also very defensible, and it's actually what I ended up doing and just skipped electing Hippocrates this turn. I think that there's a couple reasons why I like doing this. First of all, just having the Engineering Genius for me makes it a lot easier to finish the pyramids early, and finishing the pyramids early makes it even stronger. And second, I think delaying electing Hippocrates is a fine thing to do, especially in a deck like this. As I mentioned, most of the Age 1 leaders kind of like being elected later in the age, which is why I was a little iffy on picking Hippocrates here. So I thought that delaying electing Hippocrates a turn might not be a big deal, because I might not find a leader that I want to replace him with until a ways into Age 1 anyway. And so letting myself finish the pyramids early felt like a stronger, more likely to be high value for me than like electing Hippocrates now and hoping I get a replacement leader. Kind of the only leader I might want to replace him early with is Saladin. Maybe Nostradamus could also be fine early. Maybe Genghis Khan just to give me a bit extra culture or something. But it felt more likely that I would have to wait a bit for a leader and that the engineering genius giving me the extra civil action earlier with pyramids would be higher value. And it also obviously denies the engineering genius to my opponents. Both of you, I think, would quite like it. So that's why in the end I picked the engineering genius.
Yeah, I think it's a fine decision. It would be a very close call for me. The engineering genius works very nicely with the pyramids, as you said. Delaying Hippocrates is probably somewhat fine. Can still maybe backfire, but as you said, maybe there are not that many leaders that you want to get early anyway. So I think at the end it's a fine call. I of course was not too happy to see the engineering genius being taken away, but that was maybe also part of the reason why you took it. Of course, it's never great to give the engineering genius for very cheap for the opponents. Now it is my turn,
Right.
and
Just to mention, the cards I drew were Knowledge of the Ancients and a bonus card.
all right, okay. So you have the option to push it the next turn if you want to. For my turn, I have to make a decision what leader I want to go for. Homea could be perfectly solid. There's the St. Peter's Basilica, maybe for a little bit of synergy. But I do think with having the Colossus and with there being that big colonization payoff in H2 with James Cook and the Suez Canal, I really wanted to go for Sun Tzu here. And then after having done this decision, the rest of the turn I think is relatively clear. I will just want to elect him and get the additional draws as quickly as possible, build a mine, and I also just increase my population as there will be a lot of events seeded, and I don't want to miss out on development of religion and warfare, and there's also not really that much else to do, so a relatively straightforward turn. And then of course I was excited to see my first draw, and I draw two tactics, the Legion, the medieval army, and a colonization card, as well as the vast territory as the only event, which is of course a very interesting card to draw, especially the cartography is coming down the row, and now I was very interested to see if maybe that card is still around for me the next turn. If not, there's also Columbus in the game, and with him the vast territory is of course also a very strong card.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yeah, not much to say about that too.
No. Gandin Seeds, the development of warfare is revealed. I'm the only one who has a free population, so I was happy to see that. Gandin will take the iron for 2 civil actions. Thanks to the additional science from Confucius, he is even able to develop it already the next turn and can go for 2 upgrades, so that looks like a very strong economical start for him with having the library, Confucius now getting the early iron, and sadly also is willing to take the cartography, meaning that seeding the vast territory is maybe not the best idea now, and maybe I should keep it in hand for Columbus potentially.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that he takes the cartography instead of building a lab, but with Library of Alexandria and Confucius, probably doesn't necessarily need that extra lab science too early and might prefer being able to put the population into other things or also having it available for development of religion, since as Confucius, you're going to be seeding a lot of cards. So yeah. I think this turn makes sense for him. The cartography, I mean, maybe the card he seeded was a colony anyway, or maybe playing against Sun Tzu plus Colossus, you expect there to be colonies in the deck regardless. So yeah, it's definitely a valid choice.
No. All right, then we are at your turn.
Yeah, so my turn. So I decided to seed on my turn. Mainly, I was hoping to get a resource event because with the engineering genius, that would let me finish the pyramids on my turn, which is what I really wanted to do. I would miss out on the development of religion if it gets revealed, but there are more resource developments, so I was willing to take that risk. And the Knowledge of the Ancients is a neutral event that should be fine for me to seed. And I revealed the development of science for everyone. So as for my turn, after electing Hippocrates, now I sort of face the same choice of Gandin of, do I want to build the second lab this turn, or instead focus on my wonder and leave myself within open population for development of religion? And I think it's kind of a close decision. I don't have a science leader, unlike Gandin, so delaying the lab is definitely worse for me, especially if I delay the lab this turn to work on my wonder and then finish my wonder next turn and delay the lab further if there's no resource developments revealed. That would be, maybe super bad, and getting the extra civil action 1 turn earlier at a cost of 2 science. Maybe at that point it becomes less justifiable. But I think that probably chances are, especially with Gandin having Confucius, and also you having Sun Tzu being incentivized to seed, I felt that probably there would be a resource development revealed next turn so that I would have enough. So if I would have enough rocks because so the pyramids costs 4 for me to build. I guess I would need yeah and I'll have 6 by next turn. Yeah, so as long as 1 resource development is revealed by my next turn, I'll be able to finish the pyramids and build a lab. And thus, if I work on the pyramids this turn, I'll only lose 1 science for it. And so I thought that guaranteeing that I would be able to finish the pyramids next turn, while also having a population open for development of religion. The other major reason I decided to skip building the lab and just work on the pyramids instead, and we can see that I didn't even take any cards from the row, which we can also talk about, is I was looking at this Universitas that was on the row. It looked like, I should definitely be able to, it should definitely be available for me for 2 civil actions next turn. It didn't seem that, you weren't going to be able to complete Colossus in your turn. Gandin can complete Library, but then he'll be missing 1 civil action to take Universitas. So it will definitely be available for me, and I think that's a very strong wonder, especially to get early to work towards, especially maybe in a game like this, where I'm facing off against Sun Tzu plus Colossus. I need to worry about my military. If I can avoid just putting my population into my second lab, maybe, and supplement my science with the Universitas instead, so that I can supplement my military and protect myself, that seemed like a good option to avoid maybe the worst case scenario of just, being way weaker in strength than Sun Tzu Colossus. And so for those reasons, I decided, especially since I really wanted to get Universitas next turn, I just worked on the pyramids. I think maybe the card on the row that's most worth taking is, well, you could printing press is definitely an interesting option here with Shakespeare in the game and with the Hollywood coming in H3. The Irrigation could also be defended, although there isn't much Irrigation synergy in this game, only Barbarossa. And I was kind of hoping to get Saladin on my next turn anyway, and not Barbarossa. So I think Irrigation would be fine, but I think it's not a great Irrigation game. Printing Press, definitely worth considering, especially if I'm delaying my second lab. But I just thought that especially playing against Sun Tzu Colossus and maybe going into printing presses was a little ambitious, and I just wanted to make it give myself the most options to finish pyramids, take Universitas next turn, hopefully take Saladin next turn, and do whatever else I needed to do.
Yeah, I think it's a very good choice to leave yourself more flexible for the next turn, because Universitas Saladin will indeed be very strong cards, and it would be a shame if you at the end miss a civil action, maybe to take them without getting out of corruption, or without getting solving the corruption.
And I draw a rebellion and another bonus card.
Okay. Alright, then it's my turn again. I have only 1 event that I could push into the deck, that's the vast territory, but with Gandin having taken the cartography and with there being Columbus in the game, I thought it's better to not seed here, even though of course with having Colossus and Sun Tzu, generally I would really like to move the deck forward quickly, but I rather wanted to keep that colony in hand, so I skipped the politics phase. And then for my turn, I made a decision to take the development of warfare, as I thought if I maybe then start pushing it the next turn, and with Gandin having Confucius, the event deck will indeed flip very quickly, and I might need the strength relatively soon. Maybe if Gandin seeds some colonies into the deck with having taken the cartography, having an additional warrior for free could be nice. Also for both of my tactics, Legion and Medieval Army, with there being no Shishka in the game, for both of them I will likely need 2 warriors at some point anyway. So even though it will now mean, and that's of course the downside of taking it, that I can't build my second lab already this turn, I was at the end willing to take it. And then I have 4 civil actions that I need to spend. I could increase my population, I can play the cultural heritage, so I could just do some somewhat action efficient stuff. I could build a step of the Colossus, but at the end I actually made the decision to go for the Irrigation here and go for 1 upgrade at the end, taking the rich land. With going for 1 food upgrade, I guarantee that I at the next turn can increase my population 2 times and then can build a second lab if I want to. I could also take a frugality to achieve that, but I thought setting up a little bit of food production here is not bad. There is maybe not, as you said, the greatest synergy for Irrigation, but 1 leader that is available is Barbarossa. Maybe if I don't get Columbus, it could be a nice idea to set up some military with Barbarossa. Maybe I can get knights, go for some medieval army tactics, and so here I was willing to go for the irrigation, and then when I go for this one upgrade, I think it's also nice to take the rich land to get a second upgrade going very cheap soon. Sadly, I'm now relatively low on science, but with having the additional food production, I'm at least guaranteed to build a second lab at the next turn if I want to, and I also still have the cultural heritage, which can give me a science if I really need it. So I go for an early irrigation here, something I don't do that often, but I don't have that many alternatives to spend my actions nicely. I could just do some stuff like playing cultural heritage, building a step, maybe taking frugality, and I do think that could be fine as well, but here at the end I made the decision to go for the additional food production.
Yeah, I think an early irrigation is totally good, and I agree. Obviously, very strong synergy with Barbarossa. Major alternative, I guess the major cost is it might delay your Colossus by a turn, which, especially if the event deck flips soon, would be really nice to have to bump your strength with the colonization bonus. But even while doing this, because you take the rich land, if there's development of crafts or markets next turn, you'll be able to finish upgrading your farms and finish your Colossus next turn. So that probably makes this play more valid and maybe pushes it over the edge of focusing on Colossus.
No, no. And then I, as last action of my turn, will reveal the Legion tactic, because I want to keep the option to go for the Legion tactic, but I also want to keep the vast territory and the medieval army tactic. I will discard my colonization card, which hurts a little bit, but maybe I don't have the plan to push any colonies now anyway, but of course Gandin could push potentially some, so it hurt a little bit, but I wanted to keep my options open for the tactics. I didn't want to reveal the medieval army tactic yet, because that might make it that the knights are even more heavily contested, and the vast territory I also really wanted to keep for Columbus. Then I
Makes
draw
sense.
some new cards. One more event that I can see, the Reds, also the Fighting Band tactic, and another colonization card. Gandin Seeds and opens the development of settlement. That also, of course, helps me with getting the second lab going. Gandin will in this turn just go for 2 iron upgrades, gets the production going very early, and as last action takes the frugality, maybe to have potentially more workers available for the military in case there will be a bit of a military push from me.
I think that definitely makes sense from Gannon's perspective. Sensu Colossus is scary enough that you want to set yourself up for it early.
Yeah, definitely. Alright, then we are at your turn.
On my turn, I believe, I decided to seed the rebellion. Again, I think I was mainly looking for resource development here, so that I would be able to finish the pyramids and build a lab this turn potentially. Unfortunately, I didn't reveal one. I also thought that that knowing the rebellion is in the deck should enable me to prepare for it a bit more. I think neither of my opponents took a Happy Face Wonder or have an extra Happy Face from anywhere, so it should at least be a neutral event, and since I know it's in the deck, I can prepare for it better. Sadly, no resource event was revealed, but at least it was Development of Religion, which will help me avoid the rebellion. I think that now that I've sort of committed to the, finish pyramids early to get Universalis, I kind of need to do it. I do think that finishing the pyramids to let me take Universalis is definitely should be better than building a second lab this turn, especially with the military threat looming. So I do that. I also really want Saladin, especially with Hippocrates. I think kind of punished here for delaying electing Hippocrates, because I really would have liked to play Saladin this turn, but I have to wait a turn to get the second Hippocrates token. But that's life. I still Saladin is probably the best leader to pair with Hippocrates because of how good he is when you elect him early. So I think taking Saladin and the Universalis here is a pretty clear way to spend 3 of my remaining civil actions. And so now it's just a question of how to spend my remaining one. I can't take any cards from the row because I still need to get out of corruption. I mean, I could build a second warrior and take one of the cards from the row, the drama or the urban growth, but I think neither of them are too appealing. The drama, I think, would be more interesting, again, with Bach in the game, because there is the theater synergy in Age 3. But without Bach in the game, and with me taking the Universalis instead of the St. Peter's Basilica, for example, even if I had a crap list, maybe I could use dramas for a Happy Face solution, but I don't have that either, so I just don't think it's that good of a card here. So instead, I wanted to increase my population, but I did decide to build a warrior too, because the event deck is about to flip. If you see it on your turn, which I thought was likely as Sun Tzu, and then Gandin would obviously want to see this Confucius, that would mean that the first Age 1 event deck event card might be revealed in Gandin's turn, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't weakest for that. And I thought that even though it was the weakness of this is I miss a military card draw. I don't have a tactic yet, which I would really like to have. Although, I might just end up copying the Sun Tzu tactic. But I thought that I was gonna build this warrior almost certainly regardless. And so doing it now just gives me a little bit of extra protection if the event deck flips soon.
No, I think it makes sense. I think from your perspective, it should definitely be very likely that I will see it, and then Gandin will already reveal the first H1 event and might now get punished for being at 1 strength. So I do think that that makes sense. And also, I think the Universitas and Saladin are very strong cards to take. I was a bit worried that the next turn you will have 6 civil actions. You can finish the Universitas. So I do think that those are definitely some potentially strong cards. I was hoping that maybe it will take a little while until you can finish the Universitas, but definitely some potential with having a lot of civil action soon, and then maybe being able to get the Universitas, and with that additional science and a government form.
Mm-hmm. And I drew the Uncertain Borders.
Yeah. All right, then it is my turn, and I again don't see it because the Reds, with having just gone for Irrigation, is not really that great of an event. It's rather nice to maybe have the knowledge that it is not in the deck. And there is Columbus actually available for 1 civil action for me. I have the vast territory in my hand, and with that I made a decision that I want to go for Columbus here. Of course, I could still wait for Barbarossa or something, but Columbus in the vast territory is just very nice. And I also have the Colossus, so if I just elect Columbus at the end of H1, I have even the shot of maybe getting very lucky and getting an H2 colony with my Colossus draw. So I think Columbus is just a very strong leader, especially also with the Suez Canal being the game. It just gives me the opportunity to maybe go for a Suez Canal without having colonized colony normally, and that is very strong, so I didn't want to push here. Then as first action I will increase my population, as I have some food saved up during my turn. I will then build the second lab. That definitely has some downsides because again I am not guaranteed to finish the Colossus at the next turn, which can be a downside, but as I didn't see it at all, I thought maybe I don't have to be that worried about potential strength events. Gandin didn't really put any effort in preparing for strength a lot, and you built a warrior, but I thought maybe it's not that likely that my opponents would push strength events with playing against Sun Tzu and the Colossus. So I thought maybe it's not too important to finish it quickly. It could still be nice, but there's at least also still a chance that development of markets or crafts is revealed before my next turn. And so at the end I was willing to build a second lab. I didn't want to delay my science production any longer. I do think that can be a bit problematic, playing on very low science. Also, there's the first copy of Knights coming down the row. I was really interested in potentially getting the Knights because I do think with getting Columbus and the additional yellow tokens from the vast territory, I have the potential to maybe go for even 3 medieval army tactics or something like that, and that can make me very threatening. But taking the first copy of Knights for 3 civil actions here is just way too expensive, especially because I also want to take Columbus, which is what I'm also doing here. And after having taken Columbus, I have 1 civil action left. I could take another card, for example the drama, but there is no Bach, as you said. Apart from Bach, there is some synergy with Marlene in H3 and the other culture leaders, but I just rather wanted to focus on improving my civilization here, and just went for the second farm upgrade with the rich land, so that I will have a lot of population to work with, which potentially can be the start of maybe a more military heavy game when I then have a lot of population available, but it will very heavily depend on maybe whether I have the chance to get the knights or not. I will, however, again reveal a tactic this turn, this time the fighting band tactic, as with me having a lot of population, if I should not get the knights, the fighting band tactics is maybe the better tactic to improve, as it is more easily possible for me to get multiple copies of it. So I wanted to have the option for the fighting band available. Also, it gives me additional strength immediately. But I still kept a medieval army tactic as well as the vast territory in hand, to still have the option to go for the medieval army tactic in case I will get a copy of knights at some point.
Yeah, I agree that delaying the lab any further would have been hard for you. In particular, I was thinking, well, maybe getting an early Colossus plus an early Knights with the medieval army would be really threatening, but the only way you can play Knights next turn is if you build this lab. So that means that even by skipping the Colossus next turn, if you get the Knights, you could potentially build the Knights, reveal the medieval army tactic, elect Columbus, and have pretty much the same effect or even stronger effect than building the Colossus. So the lab is probably important to finally get going.
Yeah, no. Then I get again some draws from Sun Tzu, and this time I'm really getting pushed into a bit of a more colony-oriented direction, because I draw 2 more colonies, the developed territory one and the wealthy territory one, as well as the heavy cavalry tactic. I will have to see if I want to push one of those colonies with Gandin having taken the cartography, but I will have the Colossus, some additional draws, so maybe putting a colony into the deck could be an idea at some point. Then it's Gandin's turn. He can push, sadly, without being in danger of getting hit by a strength event, as I didn't push during my turn. The development of trade routes is opened, which gives some additional resource, but not enough for me to finish the Colossus at the next turn. Gandin will take the free religion, builds a warrior, wants to get a bit stronger, also builds the second lab, and then takes the breakthrough, builds a step of the library. Interesting that he builds the warrior. It makes it that he is still the weakest after his turn, but maybe he doesn't have any colonization card in hand and was a little bit afraid of a potential aggression, or maybe he wants to be able to, for example, build another warrior and maybe reveal a legion tactic that he has in hand. And of course, in general, with playing against Sun Tzu Colossus, it's maybe not that bad to preemptively start building some military. Of course, another reason could also be that there could be a colony coming that he wants to be able to maybe potentially bid 2 warriors for it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to
his turn makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So on my turn, I decided to seed. It's a little risky to seed the uncertain borders, obviously, especially playing against Colossus. Maybe the chances of winning the event aren't too high, but I felt that with having Saladin potentially pumping my strength, and also I am going to take the Knights this turn. I don't have a tactic yet, but I was still thinking that maybe you might reveal cavalry tactic, and especially since you'd be getting the second copy of Knights, I thought that the chances I should at least have a decent chance of not maybe losing the event. And I wanted to just seed because I'm not weakest on my turn, and I think I wasn't planning on building the Knights on this turn, so I wanted to seed why I wasn't weakest and reveal the Confucius event. As for my turn, so I think that aside from the Knights, which I think, again, even though I don't have a tactic, and the only tactics revealed so far are infantry tactics, especially when playing against Sun Tzu, and with me having gone for Saladin instead of Genghis Khan, having the Knights in hand is pretty important to give you the option to copy the Sun Tzu cavalry tactic if that's the tactic that gets boosted. But I also had to choose what else to do on my turn, and I made, I guess, a pretty consequential decision for the rest of my game, which is I ended up deciding to go for the theocracy as my form of government, even over the monarchy, which is also available on the row. I think that the theocracy is an interesting card, and I'm still not entirely sure the best times to play it, but I felt that this was a situation where it should be quite strong for me for a few reasons. First of all, with the Universitas, I'll have the science for it. With Saladin and the pyramids, I also have a lot of civil action supplements for it, so the lack of civil actions from theocracy hurt less than they normally do. As I thought that all the additional effects of the theocracy should be really good for me. The third military action will help me a lot, and the strength will help me a lot in this game that's looking to be probably strength heavy, again, playing against Sun Tzu Colossus. And I also thought the happy face might help me significantly. The first copy of theocracy has been discarded already, and the second copy I felt will be highly contested with everyone having the religion. And so I thought that the chances of me missing out on the second theocracy would be pretty high. I've already taken the Universitas as my age 1 wonder, so I won't be able to supplement happy faces with the wonder. And so I thought that I might be having some happy face issues going into age 2, and the theocracy will fix those, as well as my military action situation. So for all those reasons, I thought that the theocracy this should be a time when the theocracy is a high value card. And also, by playing the theocracy right now, I avoid the situation where I would be weakest after my turn, because I don't really want to build a unit this turn necessarily. And so playing theocracy now makes it that I'm not weakest, which is nice. I decided to finally build my second lab too. This maybe is a bit of a more questionable decision, having Universitas in the military-heavy game going up against... but because of my theocracy giving me happy face support, I felt that the second lab would be... that I can afford putting this population in the second lab. I should be able to get 2 more population before the age ends to potentially put into military, and that should probably be good enough, and then I won't have to worry about the last one because, again, the theocracy. So another benefit of the Theocracy I felt is it sort of enabled me to build the second lab and to get more science going, whereas without it, I probably would have had to save it for the military. So I think that, but saving the population for the military would also definitely be defensible, or just instead of spending the resources on the lab, putting the resources in the universitas, since I will probably have to play knights soon. It might be a little while before I can finish universitas by building this lab, but it also supplements me science in the meantime. And I was running a little bit low on science, especially since after playing the Theocracy, I will not have enough science to play knights next turn potentially. Although there is a knowledge of the ancients I know in the deck, so I would, even without the lab, I would still be able to play the knights next turn if that gets revealed. But I would then still be a little bit low in science. Anyway, uh, it's notable that the way I played this turn, I leave myself with 4 food and potentially vulnerable to rats. But looking at you and Gandin's position, it seemed that a rats being in the deck was unlikely. So yeah, I think looking back, I think I agree with my decision that this is a good Theocracy game. At least for the time being, I have a lot of civil actions to go. And another reason to build the lab is I was also kind of hoping to get Code of Laws too to help my civil action situation even more. So I think aside from that, the questionable decision is just, do I want to build a second lab, or do I want to save those resources, maybe just build one step for the Universitas, for example. I think that can certainly be debated, but the Theocracy does help support the second lab.
No, I think it's definitely almost an ideal situation for the Theocracy. You have 2 additional civil actions already, and there might be some military threat soon coming with me having a lot of food production, still having Sansu and the Colossus, so the additional happy phase, strength, and military action are very, very viable, while you have already enough civil actions to work with, so I do think that it's a good decision here to go for the Theocracy over the Monarchy, because with the Monarchy, as you said, you probably can't support the second lab, and you're even lower on science because the Monarchy is more expensive. So I think the Theocracy makes sense here, and then building the second lab or delaying it, I think, are both justifiable. But as you said, you probably have 2 more population for the military, and maybe that should be enough, as you said. So I think the turn looks fine at the end.
So I draw a naval trade agreement, a heavy cavalry tactic, making me regret the second warrior a little bit, and the new deposits.
No. At my turn, I for the first time in this game will seed, and I was not completely certain again if I want to push or not. I made a decision to put Wealthy Territory 1 into the deck here, but at the end I'm the strongest here. Maybe if Gandin has indeed pushed a colony into the deck, I would win tie breaks at the moment. Of course, I will actually finish the Colossus this turn, but I couldn't know that I will be able to finish it while seeding, because the ability to finish it will now it was only possible now with the knowledge of the ancients being the revealed event, giving me 2 additional resources. So I just wanted to push here, and I was hoping that with me having the Colossus and some additional draws from it and Sansu, I might still have some chances to win the colony. But of course, if Gandin goes for the cartography, he could win it, and then maybe also have a nice setup for the Suez Canal. But for now, Gandin hasn't committed to the cartography yet. Maybe he will delay developing it for a little bit longer, and then I was at the end willing to seed the Wealthy Territory into the deck. And then this turn, I was happy that I have the chance to take the second copy of Knights, allowing myself to go for the medieval army tactic. It is a little bit expensive though, so I thought about if I maybe should go for some other options. I could maybe go for a bit more economy-oriented game, maybe go for an alchemy or something, and set up a little bit of science production. But I just felt that with you having now 6 civil actions, at some point being able to finish the Universitas, Gandin having been able to set up this early iron production, getting library, having the additional science from Confucius, I just felt like I don't want to fight my 2 opponents with also trying up to build a bit of economy now. I want to go and try something, maybe with the military, maybe with colonization if I get the right cards, and rather want to play towards the strengths of my civilization. And one big strength is definitely the food production and the amount of population that I will be having, especially if I will then get the vast territory with Columbus. So I just really wanted to have the knights here, allowing myself to go for a very big amount of military, even though I don't have any payoff cards in hand yet, no knowledge about strength events, no aggressions or something, but I will at least soon get the Colossus draws, and I was hoping that I can then do some nice stuff with the additional strength that I will be getting. So I take the Knights, and then I need to get out of corruption, and I can do that with just finishing the Colossus. That makes me a bit stronger, a little bit better prepared for potential colonies that could be coming, and I have knowledge about rats, which is now quite nice because it allows me to be at 9 food after my turn without having to worry about it. So I at the end was fine with just finishing the Colossus. It's a bit expensive. I was a little bit worried with me being low in civil and military actions, that if I don't get anything out of a potential strength push, that I will just be at a disadvantage. But I will have a lot of population, and maybe I will be able to pull off something with the amount of strength that I will be able to muster. But of course it will also take a little bit of time until I will have the resources to maybe build 2 or knights, or maybe even at some point a third medieval army tactic.
Yeah, I think the Knights is definitely a powerful card. Could potentially consider, because you're likely to get a copy of Swordsman, just going into the fighting bands instead. But that would be lower upside, especially if you're aiming for 3 armies and also more military action costs. So I think the Knights makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, and at the end of my turn, I will draw 4 more cards, 2 colonization cards. So if there should be a colony now revealed before my next turn, I could maybe have a chance to win it. The second copy of Fighting Band, and then a race. Sadly, no event that I could see it, but I was hoping that maybe there could potentially still be a colony in the deck, but then maybe Gandin would have already committed to the cartography that he has taken. Gandin seeds and a cultural influence is revealed, which doesn't really change that much, gives you an additional culture over me and Gandin. Gandin will then go for the monarchy, goes with over the code of laws, which I think makes sense, as we really might need the third military action. He then finishes the library and at least has still the chance to take code of laws, so that he isn't stuck on 5 civil actions at some point. So I think that makes perfectly sense this turn.
Agreed.
And then we are your turn.
Yeah. So on my turn, I decide to seed again my new deposits. A couple reasons. First of all, again, I'm not the weakest, so I want to move the event deck forward, potentially reveal a colony. On my turn, with 2 bonus cards, I could potentially hope to win the colony over you, even with the colonization bonus. But I also think the new deposits should be a good event for me, mostly because I have this Universitas that I'd like to finish early. And one weakness is it's an expensive wonder, and I, am not getting mine upgrades for a long time, and so it might be a little difficult for me to finish the Universitas early, especially since I need to put resources into military and stuff. And so I thought that while right now the new deposits looks like it'll help Gandin more than me, I thought that maybe I will need the resources more than Gandin because I have this wonder that I want to finish early. It might also help me get mine upgrades earlier, whether they be iron or coal. So I thought that it would both be a good event for me to have in the deck, and also I want to see it on my turn. And I reveal a Confucius event. As for my turn, so let's see. There's a lot of options on my turn. I think that after increasing my population, the Engineering Genius is definitely a card I wanted, again, with the Universitas being so expensive and with my resources being so pressed right now. I thought that would be a very helpful card for me. I definitely have the civil actions for it as well. I also took the reserves. This is maybe a bit more questionable, but it should be noted too that with the reserves and the Engineering Genius, I wanted to, with you taking the Knights, it seemed that you likely had a cavalry tactic in hand you were planning to upgrade, and so I think I was planning to build a Knights this turn. Yeah, so after building a Knights this turn, that means next turn I'll have 5 resources. With Engineering Genius, I'll have 8, which is just 1 rock short of finishing the Universitas. So the benefit of taking the reserves here, even though it's a little civil action intensive, is that it'll guarantee me being able to finish the Universitas next turn if I decide that's what I want to do. Another benefit of the reserves is even if I don't use it for rocks, I could potentially look to use it for food. I mean, maybe the age will end before my next turn. I guess it probably won't, but Gandalf has 5 civil actions, and I'm taking cards from the row, and so potentially I could use the reserves for food just to guarantee me being able. I will definitely need another population before age 2 to get another Knights into the game. Potentially even getting a full heavy cavalry tactic. I will keep that tactic just in case you don't reveal a cavalry tactic that I can copy. So anyway, so I think the reserves the flexibility is also potentially useful, but I think I mostly took it looking to use it for food next turn so that I could finish the Universalis next turn. Then after building the knight, I have 2 civil actions left. Not that much to do with it. I don't have the resources to spend those civil actions on my civilization, so I kind of have to take 1 or 2 cards with it. I could take the irrigation and the warfare, but I didn't really want to clog my hand with a lot of technologies, with me being on limited science at the moment. The warfare wasn't looking too good for me, with me already being on Theocracy. The irrigation could be fine too, but with you already having irrigation, I should be guaranteed to get a selective breeding, and irrigation upgrades this late wouldn't be too good. I am not getting Barbarossa. So I think I prefer taking one of these cards on the 2 civil action row. The bread and circuses felt bad with me already being on Theocracy, not needing it. Swordsman could be defended, but I think for 2 civil actions, especially when I have this heavy cavalry tactic in hand that I can use even if you upgrade an infantry tactic, and with me already having taken knights and again building a knight this turn, I thought that probably for 2 civil actions, the swordsman wasn't too great. So I ended up going for the rich land. I think that there's definitely a chance this game that I'll end up going for coal upgrades. You might get the second copy of iron. Even if you don't, I might not want a late copy of iron and would prefer just aiming for coal. So the rich land obviously helps a lot in getting coal upgrades, and even if I go for iron upgrades, obviously they'll help with that. With the iron upgrades being late, the rich land would help sort of supplement that by, even though they're late iron upgrades, it's still getting them quicker. So I didn't feel too great just taking these 3 yellow cards this turn, though I do have a lot of civil actions and, again, not a lot of science, so maybe it is still better just to take the yellow cards instead of any of these technologies, none of which, except for the Code of Laws, which I didn't have the civil actions to take with everything else I wanted to do this turn, look too helpful for me regardless.
No, I think it's definitely completely fine to just utilize your additional amount of civil actions now to take some yellow cards, especially if with the Universitas you will need a lot of resource to finish it. So having now those additional resource yellow cards in hand and also the flexibility of the reserves, I think should be fine.
So I discard the Naval Trade Agreement. I wanted to keep my bonus cards, and I wanted to keep the heavy cavalry again, just in case you get an infantry tactic. I wanted to give myself a cavalry tactic that I could use to help my strength. The Naval Trade Agreement, I mean, could have potentially. I could try to use it to get an extra colonization bonus, though I don't know if there are any colonies in the deck. Maybe I could expect them with Gandin having taken cartography and you being on Sun Tzu. But I also, maybe if I offered it to get a colonization bonus, to either you or Gandin, maybe it would have been rejected anyway because you wouldn't want to give me the extra help with colonization. Maybe I could aim to offer it to you or Gandin just to get the extra blue tokens, but I don't know if I necessarily needed those. With being able to complete the Universalis soon, with putting population into military, I didn't feel like corruption would be a huge issue for me anytime soon. So I thought that just keeping the heavy cavalry tactic just as an option was more important than keeping the naval trade agreement as an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I drew Crusades and Raiders.
Okay, yeah, so some more strength events, and I think it's definitely important to maybe keep an option that you already have in hand available with the heavy cavalry tactic wise, so that you're not completely dependent on my choice for which tactic I will upgrade. But I will then this turn upgrade the medieval army tactics, so you're nicely prepared to copy that soon. Sadly, I can't really use the politics phase. I could maybe try an aggression against Gandin, but he only needs 1 defense card, so I didn't want to miss out on a draw in order to try out the aggression at this point. And I also definitely wanted to keep the vast territory in hand for Columbus, so I skipped the politics phase. I will increase my population. I have a lot of food saved up, so now I have the opportunity to maybe increase my population at least 1 time. I then will also set up 1 knight, reveal the tactic, switch to Columbus to upgrade the tactic, going up to 9 strength. So that is not that big enough amount of strength, but with Gandin being still a 2, and I mean he has not a chance to get swordsman, but at least he has to respond now a little bit and can't just continue upgrading his economy. Is now forced to react, and also now having this tactic with the knight going allows myself to go for a second knight at the next turn, and with that maybe I would then go up to 14 strength, so then I would maybe be at an amount of strength that would make myself very threatening. Maybe even I would be able to go up to 15, because one card that I'm willing to take here is actually the warfare, which is maybe a little bit questionable, as I'm really low in science on one hand, but on the other hand, I think it is a very important technology for me to have. I will soon get a Colossus draws, and it could just be very bad if I don't have the option, at least, to maybe keep some of those cards that I draw in hand, and maybe to get even more strength going with the warfare. I then will get more draws during H2. I have one more strength, and I am at this point just maybe aiming towards the position where I am quite threatening militarily, and with that I think the warfare is just extremely important. I could also, of course, just take the swordsman, but I have the medieval army tactic, and I think the additional military action is just way more important than maybe having the ability to get a little bit more strength with the swordsman. And so I took the warfare. However, with me being on very low science, even though it means that I maybe have a little bit of civil action depth going into H2, I made a decision to still now, it's probably the last chance, to play the cultural heritage, as I might just need every little point of science that I can get. And for culture is, of course, also, even though it's not that important at this stage of the game, it's still something to have. So but mainly the science I thought I could really, really use if I indeed would invest 5 science into the warfare the next turn. Then every bit of science might matter during H2. So even though it leaves me with a lot of food saved up again, and if I will already use Columbus the next turn for colonizing the vast territory, I will have even more food, so I might not have the most flexibility for my civil actions at the next turn, but maybe there will also only be very few H2 cards revealed before my next turn. I don't take any cards from the row that aren't on a discard spot anyway, so I was hoping that maybe it's fine to just increase my population a bunch of next turn, build a second knight, be even more threatening with the military, and then have the warfare at least as an option in hand. But I definitely plan to maybe develop it at the next turn, of course, depending maybe on what I will get from the Colossus draws. If the H should end, there's definitely a chance that maybe it could also be H1 for one turn longer, but at this point there are really not that many cards left in the deck. So yeah, at this point I was really aiming towards a bit of a military heavy direction. So I was really hoping towards the Colossus draw, maybe giving me some potential payoff cards, or maybe a potential colony for Columbus. That at this point were some hopes that I was having. At the end of my turn, I could have maybe kept the raid in hand to have an aggression for certain, but the H1 raid maybe doesn't make that much of a difference. With the wealthy territory 1 coming, I wanted to at least keep one colonization card in hand, as maybe the Suez Canal could also be a very strong way to maybe fix my economy later on. If I should win the wealthy territory 1, get one colony with Columbus and then one with the Suez Canal, that could already be quite strong potentially. So I kept one colonization card and a vast territory for Columbus in hand, and at the end ended my turn with no new draws, as I now have no Sun Tzu any longer.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an unfortunate situation for you, because with Gandin and me both being on H1 governments, the Kanmans should be uncontested. So it's kind of like not a, and Warfare, I think, in a 3-player game with there being so many alternate ways, again, 2 copies of Kanmans, less good, I think, than it is in 2 and 4-player. But I agree, especially being on Colossus and with your economy being relatively weaker, especially than Gandin, but also than me, you kind of need to go into military heavy direction to to push your advantage in the game, and the warfare will help a lot with that. So I think it's a little unfortunate, but it does seem like a necessary card for you right now.
Yeah, and at least maybe with my low science, it could also be potentially strong to somehow get into an H2 government form per revolution, and then at least the Republic could be a nice pair together with the warfare. Maybe getting the warfare now to keep some cards in hand, and then maybe getting a Republic revolution potentially at some point to then get a government form. So maybe in that sense, the warfare could be nice, but of course you are right that I should be guaranteed to get a first copy of Conmon, so if I then should get this copy, the warfare is not that relevant any longer, but short term I think it is maybe a very important card to have. Then it's Gandin's turn. He will see it, so the event deck will flip now. Your Rebellion is revealed. I was happy to see it out because I think soon I will have some unhappy workers lying around, but at the moment no one gets hit by it. Gandin, interestingly, is willing to take Nostradamus for 3 civil actions. He maybe could have also gotten him at the next turn for cheaper, but then he wouldn't get the civil action back from Confucius. Would still be 1 civil action cheaper than taking him now for 3, but now is maybe also a good time to elect him with the event deck just being flipped, and maybe he wanted to have those civil actions already out of the way, taking and electing him to maybe have more freedom during his first H2 turn. So I think there are definitely some good reasons to pay 3 civil actions here, even though he doesn't need to fear that Nostradamus will be taken away, as both I and you have already committed to an H1 leader. After that, he will go for the Code of Laws and will increase his population 2 times to get out of corruption. Interestingly, he doesn't take a copy of Swordsman, which maybe is a little bit greedy, but actually at least he knows that it can't be discarded before his next turn, as you don't have the opportunity to take Eleanor or Barbarossa, but it could of course be taken by either you or me, so it's a bit of a risk. Maybe he's hoping for the Meiji Castle, but still it could be a bit dangerous if he misses out on the Swordsman.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe though, with the Nostradamus helping him out, he figured that even if he missed the swordsman, he could also aim to get an early rifleman, and just rely on the Nostradamus bonus to protect him in the meantime.
Yeah, I think that can definitely work out fine. This was also something that I was afraid of, that with there still being Nostradamus and also the Meiji Castle being the deck, maybe there are just some relatively easy ways for Gandin to respond to my strength, and maybe it doesn't do that much at the end. I was worried about that, and maybe Gandin felt relatively comfortable, and yeah, so I think it's a fine decision, but maybe could backfire if I will really go for a big push and then he doesn't have any technology available to improve his strength.
Mm-hmm. So on my turn, it's not to seed. I am the weakest right now, and also playing against Nostradamus and Colossus, the chances of me losing a strength event and now felt pretty significant. So I didn't necessarily want to put either of them in the deck right now. On my turn, I thought that the strongest thing to do should be to finish the Universitas with the reserves, as mentioned previously. I can't increase my population to build a second knight anyway. So and I'm, thanks to my bonus cards, I'm also protected against potential aggression from you. So I thought that finishing Universals this turn should be the strongest thing I can do. That leaves me with 2 civil actions left to take cards with, and I think either of those yellow cards could potentially be defended. Breakthrough, always a strong card to have. Maybe less necessary for me now. I have pretty strong, relatively good science income with the Universals, but extra science is always nice. I think the Urban Growth could also definitely be a good card for me because I'm a little short on resources right now, probably the biggest weakness of my civilization. But I just thought that the Code of Laws was too important a card for me to have. I will be losing Saladin at some point in this game, and then once I do, operating on 5 civil actions, or even maybe 4 if the Ravages of Time is revealed, would be really bad. And so I just thought it was very important for me to take the Code of Laws to give me more civil actions to help out with my Theocracy. And that leaves me with 1 civil action left and not really anything to do with it except take the Swordsman. I wasn't too happy with taking the Swordsman. I wasn't sure if I would get if they would be good, obviously, with me having the heavy cavalry tactic in hand, or rather I'm going to be copying your upgraded medieval army tactic. That being said, it's at least it's I have enough civil actions that having the card in my hand should be fine. It's also denying it to Gandin, like you said earlier, which might be nice. Gandin is looking a little strong economically with having those early irons, so potentially leaving Gandin weaker should help me out as well. And it even might be a decent card for me. I mean, maybe both copies of Rifleman will be taken by you and Gandin, and just having it available as a way to use maybe any H2 tactics that require infantry that I might want. Again, it seemed a little questionable that it might be a super useful card for me, but I really wanted the Code of Laws, and I didn't have anything else to do with that last civil action anyway, so it's at least a potential option for me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely nice, and I do think I also agree that it's very important to take the Code of Laws here, and also quite strong as you have now with the University has some decent science production. It should be able to maybe already go for it at the next turn without being too low in science afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I also didn't have to worry about getting to medieval army tactics. Thanks to Hippocrates, I will be able to increase my population even after the age is over. So I decided to discard the heavy cavalry tactic since I'll be copying the medieval army tactic. I also discarded the raiders, again, playing against Nostradamus plus Colossus. I thought the chances of losing raiders was extremely likely. At least, maybe the Crusades, I could avoid being weakest, or even if I were to get hit by it, and in case I wanted to siege, it would be probably less damaging than being hit by raiders. And I draw the Dark Ages, a Legion tactic, and a Plunder.
Yeah. So for my
Oh,
turn.
one last thing. Maybe a more questionable decision I made was taking Strength with Saladin instead of the civil action. I mainly did this because I wanted to avoid being weakest. I thought that, again, with Nostradamus and Colossus available, the chances of there being strength events in the next deck seemed pretty high, and I even knew about one strength event that I had seeded, the Uncertain Borders. Obviously, losing the civil action is pretty rough, but with it being at the very beginning of H2, and with me having not that many resources to spend, next turn I know that I'll be increasing my population, building a knight, and that'll kind of be it for civil actions to spend on my civilization. I thought that maybe I wouldn't necessarily need that extra civil action anyway, and that giving me a chance to avoid being hit by the Uncertain Borders or any other strength events was more important. But it's definitely a little bit of a questionable decision. Maybe taking the civil action would have been better, but again, with you having Colossus getting Colossus draws, Nostradamus being incentivized to siege, I just felt that the chances of getting hit by a strength event before my next turn were pretty high.
Yeah, I do think it should be a good decision. Of course, It's always nice if you can get a civil action out of Saladin, and it's not certain what you will get as a return. But I do think it could have some very bad consequences for you if the Uncertain Borders is revealed before your next turn, because then you are just not able to increase your population, meaning it could have some very bad long-term consequences for you strength-wise. So here I think it's maybe better to just play it safe, make sure that you don't get hit by it, and then with the next turn you can build a knight, copy the medieval army tactic, and then be perfectly fine prepared for the strength. So of course I'm also sometimes a bit greedy with taking the civil action from Saladin, but I here think think it's a good decision to maybe play it safe.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being hit by the Uncertain Borders would be so bad for me. It was more important to avoid that outcome.
Yeah. Then for my turn, I was very interested and excited to see what the Colossus draws might be giving me. If I maybe will hit a jackpot and get an even stronger colony for Columbus, or maybe a potential H2 wall could be very interesting. And at the end, I was relatively happy about my draw. I, as you can see, get the strategic territory too. So I have an alternative for the colony that I can use for Columbus. Also, I get a Ravages of Time, which maybe can be an event that I could at some point put into the deck, especially with hoping maybe that it will be revealed after H2 has already ended. And I also have the Plunder in hand from H2, so an aggression that I could maybe pull off. So I thought those cards could maybe give me some options to work with. And then the question was, what do I want to colonize with Columbus? I could, of course, also see it or maybe push an event, but I felt like I just want to colonize now, and especially because if I should at the end decide to go for the vast territory, it gives me some additional food immediately. If I decide to go for the strategic territory, I would get the draws even earlier, knowing towards what I maybe want to set my civilization up. And with that, I wanted to colonize this turn. I really thought about going for the strategic territory, as the additional draws and the 4 additional strength could make myself even more threatening, but before I colonized the vast territory, as you can see, I have at the moment even an uprising issue that I can easily fix with increasing my population 2 times, but even after increasing population 2 times, both of them will be unhappy. So with going for the strategic territory, if I want to go for another army, I would need to disband something, which I wasn't really willing to do. And also, even if I go for the warfare this turn, I don't have the most military actions left. I might have to discard most of the draws of the strategic territory anyway. I have an aggression in hand, I have an event that I can push, and I have already a colony in hand that I can maybe keep in hand for the Suez Canal. So I felt like I have already gotten some decent or good things out of the Colossus, and rather wanted to enable building more armies, having the additional yellow tokens. So despite me aiming towards a strength push, I felt like the additional population is actually more helpful for me than the additional strength. If I would have been able to go for the strategic territory and set up a second knight without having to disband something, then I think I would have considered it more, but at the end I then went with the vast territory for Columbus. That allows myself
Makes sense.
yeah, that allows myself to increase my population. I can build a second knight, something that I definitely wanted to do, just again making it that both of my opponents maybe have to respond to that. For you, I think you have maybe at your next turn want to build a knight anyway and copy the tactics, so I think for you it doesn't change that much. Maybe Gandin would go for Emichi Castle anyway, but he even then is only at 5+3 strength, so it's maybe a little bit vulnerable, and maybe he will do some other stuff to be a bit safer, I mean, he can copy the Legion tactic now also, so probably is somewhat fine, but I still thought building the knight now should be quite nice. Also helps myself to get out of corruption. Then there's also one card on the road that I definitely want to take. I think in my situation, as already, which was also already the reason for playing the cultural heritage at the turn before, I need every bit of science that I can get. So having now the opportunity to take the breakthrough once for one civil action was something that I definitely wanted to use. Then as my last civil action, I could potentially just increase my population and just be civil action efficient. And that's actually what I'm doing. I thought I might have developed a warfare here already, but I think that will happen. Let's see. I think it actually won't be happening soon. Yeah, but I will increase my population here. The problem is, of course, if I go for the warfare, it's a bit of a military investment. It would help me. It's a bit of a tough decision what to discard at the end of my turn. I definitely want to keep the colony for Columbus, and then I have already to decide between keeping the aggression or the Ravages of Time. I think at this part of the game I was not too confident on how much or how likely my chances are to actually get an aggression through, with Gandin now having the opportunity to go for the Emichi Castle, and with you increasing your strength by quite a lot at your next turn. So I thought maybe it's fine to discard the blunder, and then I rather wanted to keep my science saved up. It's definitely could be fine to maybe develop the warfare, get an additional draw, go even further into the military heavy direction, but with not committing to it now, maybe I leave myself also open to some other options where I will need some science. Either maybe I find somehow the opportunity to get into a government form, maybe if there's strategy, I can go for a military push backed on by the strategy, which could be potentially a lot more threatening. So at the end, I didn't want to commit the science to the warfare quite yet, especially because this turn I don't have the opportunity to use it with the breakthrough. At the next turn I can develop it, and then I still have an amount of science left that will maybe allow myself to at least go also into coal, or for example, or maybe scientific method if I want to also get some economy upgrades going. So here I at the end went with increasing my population, even though it could potentially be nice to maybe keep more cards in hand and get an additional draw immediately.
Yeah, I think the warfare would definitely be strong for you this turn, especially because of the additional draw. But not being able to use it with the breakthrough and putting yourself on a pretty low science afterwards maybe would be too big of a cost, and you don't necessarily need it this turn either.
No, and at the end, I maybe it's also fine to not go for it, because I do actually get a bit lucky with the one draw that I'm having here. I do now draw the War over Territory, which could have quite some potential in this, and I in general think wars in this situation could be a lot stronger for me than aggressions, as with both of you having 3 military actions, Gandin soon having the Emichi Castle, I really felt getting an aggression through might be quite difficult. For war, on the other hand, Gandin can't use Nostradamus, has to maybe respond, has to build some military. At the moment he doesn't have a free population, has only those warriors, so I was very happy when I saw that I drew this war, as I thought maybe I can pull something off. Sadly, I'm missing military action, but also one resource to maybe go for another army together with the war at the next turn. But maybe in 2 turns I can have a setup where I have 3 medieval army tactics, maybe the warfare, and I thought that can maybe be a card that can justify myself having gone into that more military heavy direction. But if I don't manage to go for the war, at least I still have the Ravages of Time in hand as a seedable event, and also the strategic territory for the Suez Canal. So I was really quite happy about the early draws that I've gotten in H2. And then it's Gandin's turn. He indeed will go for just finishing the Emichi Castle, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think it's a must-do for him in the situation. And then he just takes 2 yellow cards. Could have maybe gone for the alchemy, but at this point it's maybe better to just wait for some H2 science solutions. and then he will copy the legion
Yeah, the
tactic.
theology could also have been nice for him, but it would have been one more civil action,
That's
and maybe his hope for
That's true.
Belgium.
Maybe allowing him to allow or build an additional military unit with the Happy Face could potentially be nice, but maybe he was willing here to wait for an H2 Happy Face solution and felt relatively safe with having now Nostradamus and Democracy Castle.
On my turn, I decided again not to cede. I'm still weakest on my turn, and now with Gandin having both Nostradamus and Himeji Castle, the chances of me losing a strength event felt even higher. I definitely wanted to, as mentioned previously, increase my population to build a second Knights and copy the medieval army tactic. I think that's necessary. So the question is just what else to do on my turn. I think there are a fair number of, well, the cards in there were a little interesting. I end up deciding to go with the alchemy, and well, after playing Code of Laws, I have the free science for it. I guess one weakness of playing Code of Laws here is maybe if I'm aiming for coal, I won't have enough science for coal next turn, but I think that just getting that extra civil action a turn earlier is way too important. So I think the question now is, again, about what cards to take. I think the most notable ones are alchemy, iron, and selective breeding. The main weakness of my position right now is I don't have any economic building upgrades yet, so I really need to get those started soon. And so the question is which ones I want to go with. The benefit of taking the iron this turn would be that next turn I would be able to play an upgrade to iron mines. I think that could definitely be good. However, I ended up deciding to go with the alchemy and the selective breeding instead. I think there were a couple reasons for that. First of all, I really wanted the selective breeding. I will need it, and while it is true that with you being on irrigations, I should be able to get one copy of the selective breeding. Gandin plays before me, and if I skip the selective breeding, he will almost certainly take it. I think the selective breeding would be really good for him, would fix his major issue, which is his population situation, enable him to defend a lot easier. And I also, if he took it, I don't know when the second copy of selective breeding might be available. It might be pretty late. Population is also a bit of an issue for me. Maybe not immediately, currently, but certainly in the future, if I don't get some extra population going from maybe a third army or putting it into an H2 tactic, my position could definitely get vulnerable. So I thought that just getting the first copy of selective breeding was really important for me, just to make sure I have it in my hand and can start upgrading it when I want to. And so if I'm taking that, I only have one civil action left, and so that means that I can't take the iron and have to take the alchemy instead. I think the alchemy is also a good card for me without an urban growth, and having the rich land maybe a bit less good than the iron, but also having the Universitas. If I get 2 alchemy upgrades, I'll be on 6 science income, which is the same as 2 scientific methods and should last me perhaps the rest of the game, whereas maybe 2 scientific methods with the Universitas may be a bit overkill. I mean, there is a spaceflight and Manhattan Project in the game, not that many, and a couple of science leaders, so it could also be fine to get scientific methods, but scientific methods are also going to be pretty contested with no one having alchemies right now. And so in the end, I thought that again, especially with me really wanting the selective breeding, I figured going for alchemies plus selective breeding and coal should probably be fine. I mean, it might be a bit difficult to, it might be a bit harsh on my rocks to wait that long to wait for coal upgrades, but also I have the rich land in my hand, and I also know that there's new deposits in the deck. The new deposits might suggest I want the iron upgrades earlier instead, but it will also make it a bit easier for me to get coal upgrades. Looking back, I'm a little maybe questionable. Maybe skipping the selective breeding and taking the iron plus the alchemy would have been better. Again, with me waiting so long to get any economic upgrades going whatsoever, perhaps aiming for coal plus selective breeding was a little ambitious, especially with there being no Watt in this game. If there was Watt in the game, I think this would definitely be the right decision. With no Watt, it becomes more questionable. There's a railroad, though, that supports coal. And if I took iron plus alchemy, then I would have an extra civil action. I didn't really want the theology or the printing press either. So, I mean, maybe I could float the civil action. That doesn't feel great. Kind of a difficult decision. I think that, but probably, again, just because the selective breeding is so good for Gandin, and I will also need it myself at some point, I think maybe this is the correct decision after all. But I think the iron would be really good for me too. So I guess I'm kind of regretting the strength of Saladin. I mean, no one even seeded the last turn, so it ended up being completely useless for me. And maybe a action I could have taken the iron instead, and that would have been better. Hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you would have taken the civil action, and of course, Gandin maybe could have ceded. Maybe that was the reason why I didn't cede. But yeah, at the end, of course, the event deck was moved at all. So now, of course, it would be very nice to have the civil action, and I agree it's a tricky decision for you. I do think it's maybe the right decision to go for the selective breeding because it's just in case I will go for some continued strength pressure, then having the ability to maybe get some additional population out relatively soon could maybe be important, and also denying maybe the ability of Gandin to do that with an early selective breeding. But of course, the iron could be quite strong. At least you're playing in front of me, so maybe you can have the chance to take the first copy of coal and are a bit more likely to get it. For the last civil action, maybe I would have also considered potentially the theology instead of the alchemy. It's of course not needed at the moment, but maybe it could be an idea as a backup, as I think maybe the alchemy. Maybe you will still end up going for it, but I thought maybe the selective breeding could be more important to go for first, and there will be coal, some other stuff, so maybe just having the theology just as a backup in case you don't find a nice opportunity to go for one of those H2 happy face solutions. Maybe could be an idea, but maybe there will also still be the opportunity to go into alchemy at some point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't really consider the theology just because I feel that like when you have an opportunity to avoid an age and the theology or Brennan circuses, I like taking it because those just feel like pretty like inherently inefficient buildings just to invest a population in. I would much rather have an organized religion or a team sports instead. But I see a point that especially if I'm going for early selective breedings, then help giving me an extra free population to put into military or something. So I definitely should have considered that more than I did. I guess I just felt that I didn't really want to. I wanted to have one like age one upgrade build.
Yeah. No, I think it's also definitely reasonable to go for the alchemy here. But with the Universitas and the four science production that you are having, I think maybe I would have leaned towards the theology. And I agree with you that an H2 happy phase solution would be a lot better to get, but just having it as a backup, I think could potentially be nice. Maybe makes it that you don't necessarily have to prioritize the H2 happy phase solution as much and can maybe go for some other options if those are very strong.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So, I discard everything but my two bonus cards, and I decide to keep the Crusades of the Dark Ages, even though it's a strength event. I just thought that I had too much that I wanted to spend my science on, and I thought that the Dark Ages would be too risky. I mean, maybe again because I have more science income than both of you, you could say that I would be able to recover from the Dark Ages easier than my opponents. So perhaps it would have been a better card to keep than the Crusades. I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about like which situation, who get who which civilizations get hit harder by the Dark Ages than others. I think it's a pretty tricky, pretty complicated question. But looking at it again, it seems that maybe both of you could potentially be hit pretty hard by the Dark Ages. So perhaps I should have kept that. Whereas the Crusades, I mean, now that I have these two armies going, maybe it looks more likely that I won't get hit by the Crusades. But it's also a less impactful event in general.
No, that's definitely maybe a good point. At this point, the event deck has just flipped, so seeding the Dark Ages now could mean that it takes quite a while until it will be revealed, and it's very hard to say who will profit then the most from it. So maybe just keeping the safe event to play with the Crusades is the right choice here, I think. Then for my turn, um, I was no, there was one leader revealed, Napoleon, who at the end allows me to go for the war over territory here, which I was very happy to see. It's very expensive for me to take Napoleon here, but I just felt like I have drawn this war, which I was very happy about. And now getting Napoleon, as I just used Columbus, I want to go maybe get an H2 leader anyway. And with Napoleon, I can maybe really go for some very big military pressure. And I was very happy that I had the opportunity, that I got the war, and now also the option to go for Napoleon. Then, of course, there was the question which player should I declare the war against, but you can use Saladin for strength, you can go for the swordsman, and for maybe a bit more strength. So I think you have a relatively easy way to get more strength. Maybe you would also lose the war at the end, but it wouldn't cost you as much. While for Gandin, he doesn't have a free population. He has only those warriors that are the cavalrymen on the row, but if he wants to build one, he needs to destroy something, which I thought could be very expensive. If he doesn't build one, then he has only those warriors and will get hit quite heavily by the war. So I hope that maybe I can now really utilize the strength that I built towards with Napoleon and the war, and make Gandin maybe destroy something, lose some yellow tokens, just cause him some issues so that he can't just maybe run away with the economy that he managed to build up to this point. And so I was very happy that I had the option to do it. I considered delaying the war by one more turn, because this turn sadly I can't go for another army. But then if I wait one more turn, there's also just a chance that maybe some cards will be revealed that could help Gandin, like Rifleman, maybe strategy is just also some time to prepare for the strength push, and I just wanted to rather hit him right now, while there at the moment only are the cavalrymen on the road to maybe help him with the strength. And so I just declared the war, went for Napoleon, and with the military action that I have, thanks to him, I can build another knight, go up to 20 strength, and also building the knight just gets me out of corruption. It's of course a heavy commitment. I don't go for the iron. I go for Napoleon for 3 civil actions. But again, just slowly building up some iron mines, I think it's just would leave me in a position where I'm maybe just a lot behind, while now I have the opportunity to do some real damage to Gandin's position, and also just maybe keep the pressure even more alive with building another warrior, going up to 24, 24, maybe even 25 strength with the warfare. So I just felt that it's just too strong getting this option to go for the war with Napoleon, and I then just went for the turn, and I think it's stronger than the alternatives that I have here.
Yeah, no complaints with warring Gandin instead of me.
Yeah, yeah, but maybe you were also a little bit worried about the strength increase. I was a little bit unhappy about the cards that were revealed after my turn, because there are 2 cards revealed that help Gandin with potentially defending the war, the strategy, and the rifleman. So I was a little bit unhappy. On the other hand, I also got a bit lucky with having even the opportunity to go for this war together with Napoleon, so maybe that balances itself out. But yeah, sadly, the riflemen are revealed, which allows Gandin to increase his strength without having to destroy anything, which I was a little bit unhappy about, but I will still be able to win the war and maybe do a bit of damage, especially because losing yellow tokens really hurts Gandin quite a bit, as it will cause an uprising issue for him. He goes for 2 upgrades, is now at 11 strength, and can sacrifice a unit, but only if he sacrifices a rifleman, he will prevent another yellow token, and that is quite a costly price. So I thought maybe he will just not sacrifice anything, and then I will still gain 2 yellow tokens. So even with the rifleman, I think the war is still very strong for me here.
Yeah, I agree. And Gandin also takes the reserves, which I think is a necessary card for him, because he can use it for food to help out his uprising that I'll have next turn.
Yeah, that's true. A very important card for him.
As for my turn, so I decide again not to cede. I'm still weakest after those riflemen, and I do have to choose what to upgrade this turn. I can go for either the alchemy or the selective breeding, and perhaps I make the wrong choice here, especially considering which leader I end up going with, in that I go with the alchemy upgrades instead of the selective breeding. I think I was just maybe I just figured that since I would only get one, I would only have enough rocks for 1 selective breeding, even with the rich land. That I wouldn't, even with a selective breeding upgrade, I wouldn't be able to increase my population next turn anyway. And so I preferred to get these lab upgrades and then maybe aim for a double selective breeding upgrade at some point. On the other hand, with having the Universitas, my science situation is perhaps already good enough that I should prioritize food, especially with you having Napoleon now threatening a 3rd army next turn. Maybe even though I would only be able to get 1 farm upgrade, that would still be, let me live off of that 1 farm upgrade for 2 turns, and I would be able to increase my population in 2 turns. And just having more food in general would be helpful. So I was maybe also thinking a little bit about rats, but at least you are not playing as if there's rats in the deck. Gandin kind of is, but that's also maybe not a major concern. So yeah, I think probably in retrospect, I should have done the farm upgrade this turn instead of the lab upgrade. Anyway, so especially since, again, I choose to take as my leader Maria Theresa, I think looking at the leaders available left in the deck, James Cook isn't going to be good. You can see that if I don't take Maria, the leaders left in the deck, James Cook is not good for me. Darwin isn't good for me, especially with me having the religion. So if I don't take Maria, the only leader that will be left for me that will be decent is Newton, who would be good for me, but also Gandin probably wants Newton since he'll probably go for scientific methods. And I just felt that with me already having selective breedings, even though I'm not upgrading this turn, perhaps I should have, but I think especially in a 3-player game, and especially in this situation where there's so many issues with strength, and the biggest weakness of my civilization is probably my resources, that Maria seems like just a very strong leader for me. I won't elect her this turn, again, because I won't have a free population to put into my military anyway, but I definitely at least want a turn in hand. As for my remaining civil actions, I took the strategy, even though I have 3 military actions already, more obviously helps. With my Universitas and Maria, I felt that even though I have a lot of technologies I want to play in the short-term future with the selective breeding, with the coal, maybe that was another reason why I went with the alchemy upgrade, because I decided to take the strategy that I wanted to aim to play relatively soon. I also think that there aren't that many great alternatives in the row. I don't need the Republic or the justice system. I could yeah, I already have the selective breeding. Journalism seems optimistic. So I think that especially when considering the alternatives, strategy does seem like the strongest card available to me. It's also a denial against you, for whom you haven't committed to warfare yet. So strategy could really make you a lot more threatening. I think that it is right to take the strategy, I believe, at least. And with my last civil action, I take the patriotism. With having so many techs in my hand already, I didn't want to take another tech to clog my hand more that I probably wouldn't be able to play. I mean, the cavalryman might be nice to either prepare for H3 tactics or to put my strength up a little bit, but I already have the swordsman to increase my strength a little bit. And I also thought that patriotism is just a strong card for me in general, with being low on wax, with this being such a military heavy game. It should help affect me a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think that taking strategy and patriotism should be right. It's just upgrading alchemy instead of selective breeding looks more questionable to me.
Yeah, I would agree with this analysis. I think the turn looks fine, only that I probably also would maybe like it more to go for one selective breeding upgrade instead of the alchemy, because especially with Maria, you maybe want to have the additional food as early as possible, and now you can't also at the next turn very likely not go for 2 upgrades immediately, and also the 3 resources that are now gone into the alchemy upgrade could maybe be needed somewhere else more urgently, as your science production was already somewhat fine. It can still be nice, of course, to maybe set up some additional science, but here I think I would agree also with your analysis that maybe the selective breeding could be the better choice.
So I end up drawing a popularization of science, a war over technology, and an independence declaration.
All right, so at my turn, I have basically only one, or I have 2 events in hand, but a strategic territory I want to keep for a potential Suez Canal, but I want to push, so I made the decision to push the Ravages of Time. There's maybe a little bit of danger that it could still be revealed before the end of H2, but the event deck has moved at all so far, so I was hoping that it will be revealed at the right timing, and if not, then it's bad, but maybe not the end of the world. I was willing to accept that risk, so I seeded the Ravages of Time here with being the strongest. First of all, I will of course deal the 2 yellow tokens from the Warber territory, which helps me a lot. Now together with the vast territory, I have already gotten 5 additional yellow tokens, which really helps me to maybe build more military, but also I will actually build one other thing apart from the military this turn. I will then see the Ravages. Confucius event is revealed, giving everyone an additional science. And then for this turn, I think I kind of have to go for the Republic here. Of course, maybe it's a little bit of an anti-synergy with going for a military push, as I am stuck on very low military actions, especially now that the strategy is taken away. But at least I still have the warfare in hand to potentially improve that area of my civilization. And I do think the boost that my civilization gets with going up to 7 civil actions is just too big, and maybe allows myself to build up a little bit of economy also during the following turns, especially because at the moment I don't have any more wars or aggressions in hand. Gandin is now already at 11 plus 4 strength. He decided to not sacrifice anything with the Meiji Castle. And with that, I just felt like now it's the time to maybe improve some peaceful areas of my civilization. If I maybe should draw some military heavy cards again, another war, I should, even with having the Republic, still be able to make use out of them, hopefully. So I go for the Republic. I have, after developing it, 5 civil actions left. And I will first of all increase my population that's needed to get out of corruption. And while I didn't have any military or any aggressions or wars in my hand at the moment, I still thought it could be nice to just build a third warrior, go for the third medieval army tactic here, just to maybe get some responses out of you or Gandin, maybe distract it a little bit, building the economy, and maybe there's also a chance that I draw an aggression or a war, so I was willing to build another warrior. Maybe I could also delay it, but I thought it is nice. It's maybe questionable because I will also miss out on a draw, but it just makes me look a lot more threatening, and sometimes maybe it will cause, it could potentially cause some weird responses or some very costly strength increases by my opponent. So I built a warrior. I could have maybe considered also building a third lab, which I can't do now that I have only 2 resources left after having built a warrior. I'm relatively low in science, so that could have been very interesting. At the end I decided to, after having gone for the warrior, to actually go for a 4th mine, and I will also take the breakthrough, as I also kind of need some additional resources. I think both the additional science from a third lab and the additional resource from the mine are potentially useful for me, but the mine I can build together with the third warrior. So at the end, with me kind of wanting to build a third warrior, I then made a decision to go for the 4th mine instead. Just getting a bit of resource production going now. I am playing behind you, so maybe the first coal could be taken away, and then with being on 4 resource production, maybe it will be a little bit easier to later on in H2 or the beginning of H3 finish the Suez Canal as an alternative way to get some additional resource income going to the coal. So I at the end thought it could be interesting to build this mine, and also one alternative of course could have been to increase my population, but then I would go would go even deeper into consumption, meaning that I would miss 1 food to increase my population another time at the next turn. Maybe I don't necessarily need the additional population, but who knows, maybe if there are not the most exciting options in the row, maybe building a third lab at the next turn could be interesting. If I should draw some war and aggression, maybe building more military units could be interesting. So I wanted to maybe have the ability to go for 2 more population, while also having this mine already built now and having a little bit of additional resource income going. The cards on the row, apart from the breakthrough and the Republic, are not the most exciting for me to take. So at the end I just went for the breakthrough for 3 civil actions. I don't have a tactic for cannons. I could of course already take it as a safety pick, but I felt like I need the science that much that I am willing to potentially miss out on the cannons, and in order to get the breakthrough going here, and maybe allowing myself to go for coal at some point while still having at least a little bit of science left. And that then is the end of my turn.
I was definitely a little surprised to see the 4th mine, but with all the extra yellow tokens you're getting, it does look justifiable. And as you say, potentially letting you live off of 4 bronze mines and a Suez Canal for your rock income should be possible if you end up if I end up getting the first copy of coal and the second copy is really late or something. So while it was a little surprising to me, I definitely see the logic to it.
No, I just felt like maybe I have that many yellow tokens now. I kind of want to utilize them somehow, and that 4th mine could maybe pays off relatively quickly, and maybe I have enough population that I can just keep it for the rest of the game. Then I will get 2 draws, and I do draw an event, the Iconoclasm, so I can potentially see it at the next turn, and I also draw a colonization card. I was happy to see that because it might help me winning the wealthy territory that I have in the deck. Gandin seeds, and Confucius event is revealed, so 1 additional science for everyone. Thanks to that additional science, I have now 6 instead of 5, which gives me some additional options. For example, riflemen are coming down the row. Also something like scientific method could now potentially be developed during my next turn, even though of course I'm missing resources to go into that. Gandin goes for team sports this turn. Sadly, he had the option to go for that happy face solution, and it helps him fixing the uprising, but at least his actions are forced. He still didn't find the time to get the last mine upgrade going, so at least he got still a bit disrupted and is now already relatively deep into his yellow bank, and then he will take a copy of Cavalryman, the selective breeding, so I think that all makes sense.
Yep, agreed. So on my turn, I don't push again. I'm still weakest. Don't necessarily want any of those cards in the deck. I mean, popularization of science could be fine for me, although maybe not if Gandin gets scientific methods plus Newton or something going. And just in general, with being weakest, I don't really feel like seeding. The card that I really wanted on the row on my turn was the coal, not just because getting coal upgrades earlier is good, but because I have that. I know that there's a new deposits in the deck that I seeded, and so while I think that other upgrades would also be nice, especially farm upgrades, I just thought this coal upgrade would essentially give me an extra 4. It would give me an extra 4 rocks. Yeah, because of the new deposits, which felt just way too good to pass up. And so that took 5 of my civil actions, and so my other 2, all I can do is take cards. I think there are a couple notable options. The Rifleman is definitely a card that would be nice to have. I could just skip using Swordsman and getting Rifleman. A Vision upgrade would also be nice. I still have a ton of upgrades I need to do. It would help me get those earlier. In the end, though, instead of taking any of those cards, I took the Cannon for 1 civil action plus a Frugality. I think with me having Maria and with also me delaying my farm upgrades this long, the Frugality seemed like it could be a very good card for me as well. Basically kind of food and science in one. And it also, by taking the Frugality, I can also take the cannons. Now, I don't, like you, I don't have any cannon tactics in my hand yet, but I could draw one, or someone else could play one that I want to copy. I mean, these upgraded medieval army tactics, might be difficult to live off of for the rest of the game, and so just having the cannon in your hand as an option for tactics is really good, and it's just, I think when cannon is available for 1 civil action, you need a very good reason to pass it up, and I didn't really have a very good reason. Maybe if I had a Conquistadors or a classic army tactic in my hand, I might pass it up, but without those, I thought it was just too important of an option to have, especially again with it letting me take the Frugality, which also felt like a very strong card for me. So I think even in retrospect, like I said, it feels that with knowing new deposits, this mine upgrade is way too strong to pass up, and so it's just a matter of what else to take with it. I think the efficient upgrade definitely also looks very good because I am kind of struggling. Now, if the new deposits is revealed, I will at least be able to get 2 farm upgrades on my next turn, and then potentially on my next turn I could upgrade another mine or something. There is still a rich land left in the deck I could hope to get. So there are other ways to enable me to get these early upgrades, but it is also true that I don't actually have a way that I know I could use the cannons yet. But also, Frugality looks really good, especially with you threatening so much strength right now. Me, with this mine upgrade, I was a little scared of if you do a war. I mean, I'm not protected against an aggression from you, but there's nothing I could do about it. At least you haven't drawn that many cards since you've been on 2 and 3 military actions for most of the game. So I just thought that even though it's risky and leaves myself in somewhat of a vulnerable position, knowing the new deposits is in the deck, the core upgrade felt way too good to pass up.
Yeah, and here we can maybe also see a reason why you actually went for the alchemy, because I think if you would have gone for the selective breeding upgrade, you would miss 1 resource to go for a coal upgrade this turn, as the alchemy is 1 resource cheaper, and you would have maybe then already used the rich land for the selective breeding, so you wouldn't have it around for the coal. So maybe with the new deposits coming, not giving you the opportunity to go for the coal could of course be a justifiable reason to not go for the selective breeding, even though
Also,
I do think the early food could also still be quite nice to have. But
also, I think I wouldn't have had the science for a coal this turn either, because the Confucius event was revealed after my turn. Actually, 2 were revealed after my turn.
That's also true. Yeah. So so that's of course an argument to delay the selective breeding to allow yourself to get the coal going quicker, especially with you having knowledge about the new deposits. That's of course an additional factor. Maybe it could still be fine to get the food first, but with that, it's closer again for me, the decision between going for the alchemy or the selective breeding at the turn before.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Anyway, my choice of discards, I guess, was also a little complicated because I only have 3 cards left in my hand. I think I decided, but I decided to keep the bonus cards again, either for defense. They don't actually help me for defense now, but maybe if I draw an Age 2 bonus card or something, they could help, and also potentially if there's any colonies in the deck, they could help. And I didn't really want any of the other events aside from the popularization of science, which I kept as at least a neutral event and potentially a good event for me.
Yeah.
And I drew a developed territory, an inhabited territory. I think that's developed and historic, actually, and civil unrest.
Yeah, so some colonies, maybe if you should win a colony, could be interesting for the Suez Canal. Then it's my turn, and I made a decision to push the Iconoclasm into the deck here. Not necessarily because I wanted to have it in the deck, even though I thought maybe it could be fine, but losing Napoleon and potentially being stuck on 2 military actions I think can be quite dangerous. Gandin has Nostradamus, will now have the knowledge that the Iconoclasm is coming, but I thought you losing Maria Theresa could potentially be quite hurtful for you, so at the end I just wanted to push, as I felt like there could be some events that could really improve my position here, because when we see how the card row is moving, there's a scientific method available in the 2 civil action area. For me, thanks to the Confucius event, I have now just enough science to develop it, but I'm missing just 1 resource to go for an upgrade immediately, and there could be some events revealed that could maybe help me. I'm the strongest, so some strength events could be nice, especially for Ray and border conflict could maybe give me some additional resources. There could be new deposits coming, but there's also 1 card in the deck that I actually acknowledge about, and it's the wealthy territory, and I really wanted to push here as I thought there could be some events, and especially the wealthy territory also, that could really improve my turn and maybe give myself really a push into setting also up for a decent economy that I maybe wouldn't have the chance to build if I don't hit the right event here. So I seeded the Iconoclasm, and I was very happy to see that the wealthy territory is actually revealed. I think I was at least willing to bid an army and my colonization card. Thanks to having drawn the colonization card, at the end I am actually winning it for just a knight and a colonization card. You passed on it probably because at the moment you have no food income and you can't easily rebuild your army.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so only Gandin at the end was willing to bid for it, and but I'm able to win it for just a knight, so I was very happy to see it, because now out of the sudden I have more than enough resources to go for a scientific method upgrade. I think in such a situation where you have been in bronze mine for such a long time, I do think the wealthy territory can be extremely strong, and that's maybe one of those examples that allows me now to go for the scientific method and to go for 1 upgrade. I have enough resources now to even go for a 2nd upgrade immediately. I don't necessarily need to rebuild a knight. I don't have any payoff cards, no aggressions or wars in hand, so it's not that I necessarily have to rebuild it here. So I could just invest all of my resources into a 2nd scientific method upgrade. But I at the end decided against it, because that would leave myself again at 0 plus 4 resources and could make it quite difficult to maybe finish a Suez Canal soon, or maybe also to get into coal. Getting into coal could be possible because there are copies of efficient upgrade that I can take at the end of my turn, so that would be possible. But also with having the Suez Canal in mind, I thought I don't want to commit to the 2nd upgrade of the scientific method immediately, and taking the efficient upgrade also means that I can maybe use it for the 2nd lab upgrade very nicely if the coal mine shouldn't be available soon, and maybe I aim towards a setup where I just go for the Suez Canal without any coal upgrades. So to get out of corruption, I then increased my population. I also made a decision, even now that I didn't go for the 2nd upgrade, to still not rebuild the knight with the same reasons. I just want to have more resources saved up to maybe build up some economy quicker. And then I had 2 civil actions left after doing all this, and there were 3 cards that I really wanted to take, and it was a tough decision on which cards do I want to pass and which 2 cards do I want to get. There's a copy of Rifleman, it's the last one, with Gandin having already taken the first copy. There are, of course, those efficient upgrades that could be extremely valuable for me, but there's also a copy of Organized Religion, and while there is another copy coming, it is also that you, who are playing in front of me, also still needs a happy face solution. You have still quite a strong amount of civil actions, especially for the time being, where you have Saladin, and I just thought it could be that if I don't take the Organized Religion here, it's not unlikely that I will just miss out on a happy face solution, which could potentially be dangerous. But for the moment, I'm still in an area of my yellow bank where I can get some happy population out, and I shouldn't have very big uprising issues even when I lose the 2 yellow tokens to the end of the age. There's at least a chance that I still get a second copy, and when we take a look at the age 3 leaders, there's Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich, and Steve Jobs in the game, so all of the leaders that can give additional happy faces are in the game. Both copies of Opera are still in the game, so I just felt like both Rifleman and the efficient upgrade are at the end more important cards, and despite being at risk of maybe not having a happy face solution going into age 3, I was willing to or I valued both Rifleman and Efficient Upgrade even more highly, especially the Rifleman. I think it's just a must grab, allowing myself to maybe upgrade with Warriors at some point, but also the Efficient Upgrade maybe allows myself to go for 2 instead of only 1 coal upgrade at the next turn, if the coal should be available. So I also wanted to have one of those Efficient Upgrades, even more than making sure that I have a happy face solution. But it was a little bit of a tough decision, but I think at the end those 2 cards are maybe the more important ones. And that is the end of my turn. With not building a knight, I will draw 3 cards, and those 3 cards are the classic army tactic, so a bit lucky. It's a tactic that I can work very nicely with the raid and also an international trade agreement.
I no particular things to say.
Yeah, then we can move on with Gandin's turn. He will push with having Nostradamus, get some additional culture. The new deposits are revealed. Similar amount of resources gained. I was happy that maybe building the bronze mine was now somewhat rewarded with the new deposits being revealed, and we all gain a relatively similar amount of value out of that event. Gandin will now go for selective breeding upgrades. I think it's good for him to get his food production going, as he is operating on a slightly damaged yellow bank now, so that getting the food production earlier might be very important for him. And then he takes 2 yellow cards, the efficient upgrade and the revolutionary idea.
It makes sense to me. As for my turn, this turn I decide to push. I know what the last card in the deck is. It's the uncertain borders that I had seeded, and even though I know that I will lose it, I'm not going to be able to get not weakest after my turn. I will see. I'll end up getting +2. I think I'm not going to be able to get not weakest after my turn anyway. So I thought that just getting the popularization of science, at least right now, it's a reasonably neutral event. And I just wanted to have a bit more knowledge of the next event deck. And since I would lose it regardless, I felt that it was okay to lose it. This turn, it didn't. As for the rest of my turn, so I think the main choice here is probably, do I want to get selective breeding upgrades, or do I do what I ended up doing, is play the swordsman? And I think it's a pretty tough call. At the end of the day, I was a little worried about aggressions from you. With only being at 13 strength, I mean, you haven't done aggressions against me yet, but you've had some draws since then. And I thought that with me only having -6... Yeah. Well, I guess there are a couple reasons. First, if I don't play the swordsman now, then the age I felt would probably end before my next turn. It might not, but I mean, you and Gandin both have a lot of civil action, so it felt reasonably likely. And I didn't want to risk the swordsman being discarded, lost at the end of the age. Both of the riflemen are gone. I could aim to get a modern infantry, perhaps, but upgrading straight from warriors to modern infantry may be a little difficult. I also don't know when this will be revealed. It also costs a fair amount of science, and I'm kind of have a lot of things I want to spend my science on. So I just felt that playing the swordsman to be able to have them available to get a little bit of extra strength felt more important to me, especially since I have alternatives ways to use my resources than the farm upgrades. Even though the farm upgrades would still be nice with Maria Theresa. I can also play the Patriotism. Now I'm only playing the Patriotism for 2 resources with the Swordsman, but another reason I wanted to play the Patriotism was I was having some hand size issues, especially with I'm gonna be going to electing Maria this turn, and so I was worried about that, and I kind of just wanted to get that patriotism out of my hand. The frugality I'm not going to be able to play this turn or next turn, so if I wanted to get cards out of my hand, I needed to start with the patriotism. And so even though I'm losing a little value out of it by only getting 1 resource out of it, just freeing up the hand space felt more important, and it's at least some value out of the patriotism. Then after electing Maria, I can spend the remainder of my resources by upgrading a mine and my second lab, which leaves me with 3 civil actions left to take cards. And I think there are the one card on the row that I thought was an absolute necessity for me to take was the Organized Religion. You also really need the Organized Religion, so I figured that if I didn't take this, then you would take it, and then I would be struggling pretty heavily to fix my uprising issues next turn, because I won't even have a way to increase my population with the way I'm playing this turn. If the Organized Religion hadn't been on the row, then perhaps upgrading my farms would have been much more of a necessity to leave me more able to try to get out of Revolt. But with me being able to take the Organized Religion this turn and having a surefire way next turn to fix any uprising issues, I thought it was okay. Not great, obviously, but I thought that making sure that the Swordsman wasn't discarded before the end of the age felt to me more important than getting the farm upgrades this turn, since I can also, as an alternative to getting farm upgrades, upgrade my other buildings instead. So a little bit of a difficult turn. Maybe a little questionable, but again, doing the turn this way also gets me the patriotism out of my hand, so that I still have a little bit of hand size issues, but they're a little bit alleviated by playing the patriotism. So, looking back, I question it a little bit, but I can also see the reasoning behind it. It also moves me from 13 to 15 strength, which means that if Gandin replaces Nostradamus on his turn and doesn't increase his strength at all, I will at least be strongest in my turn. So that's another. Or if he only increases strength by 2, which is possible if all Gandin does, for example, is upgrade another warriors to riflemen, then doing it this way means that potentially on my turn I could win the strength tie with Gandin and seed. So that's another small benefit to upgrading these 2 warriors to swordsmen.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a tricky turn. You basically have to make some decisions whether you want to play it safe or maybe a little bit greedy with deciding on whether you commit on swordsman or not, deciding on whether you are willing to spend 3 civil actions in the organized religion or not. I think maybe it could have been an idea to be a bit more greedy here and skip the organized religion, but I also think they are not the most exciting alternatives for you on the row. But if you let the organized religion stay in 3 civil actions for me, maybe I will of course take it, but I have that many resources lying around. There's a coal coming down the row, so I think I very likely would not end up taking it, and again just risking it to miss out on it. Maybe you could have been a little bit greedy there, but on the other hand, you can maybe just take frugality in reserves, have a relatively full hand, which could be a bit problematic, so just having it in hand completely for certain is definitely not bad. I do think it hurts maybe a little bit to further delay the food production with having Maria, but of course if the age ends and you miss out on swordsman, that could also be quite bad. You don't have and you don't have a way to get improved infantry units. Maybe you can of course hope for the modern infantry, but it's always a bit risky. So I think it's a tough turn. I probably would sit before it for a while and at the end not be certain whether I want to take certain risks or not. My gut feeling at the moment is that maybe I would actually be committing to the selective breeding upgrades this turn, but maybe when I am after taking an even closer look, maybe I would decide different, so it's very hard for me to tell. Definitely a tricky turn.
Yeah, I will admit I didn't take a super close look at your turn, so I didn't consider that maybe if I left it 3 civil actions, you wouldn't be able to nicely take it while also getting coal upgrades or something. So I should have done that instead of just kind of. I think I just kind of assumed that you would take it if it was available to you, but I shouldn't have done that and should have taken a closer look. So that was my bad.
No, but it's also, of course, not bad to have it available for certain. Then
Right.
you would draw 2 cards, and
Yeah, so I actually discard one of my bonus cards. With the age being about to end, I can defend against aggression from you, even just with the one bonus card. Um, so I felt that pretty sure, right? Yeah. So I thought that it was more important to give me a few options to develop. I develop territory. Maybe there's low chances that I'll be able to play it, but I mean, maybe if I happen to draw a lot of H3 bonus cards or something, or maybe even if although, well, I guess that would probably not be good regardless. But I thought there was at least like a minor chance if I got the satellites or a lot of bonus cards that the developed territory could be a suitable event for me. And with me being able to defend even with one bonus card and with the age about to end, I felt that the second bonus card was even less likely to be useful than the developed territory. And the civil unrest with the organized religion also felt like a safe potential event to seed. And I drew the refugees and the international agreement.
yeah. So at my turn, first of all, I was happy when I saw during your turn that the uncertain borders were revealed. I got the value out of the war for my strength push, and also, of course, the disruption of my opponents. But I didn't find any strength events to push, so I was happy to get the additional yellow token, which maybe makes it a little bit easier for me now to work on having missed out on the organized religion and having no happy face solution available at the moment. For my politics phase, I don't want to push the colony. I still want to keep it available for the Suez Canal, and so I made a decision to just offer the international trade agreement. And I wanted to get the additional resources still, I think. Let me see. Yes, I gained the additional resource as I felt like with my big yellow bank, even though I will soon lose the yellow tokens, and maybe it could be a bit bad to be stuck on irrigation, I still thought that maybe the additional resource production could be more important for me here. I think it's close to which player I should offer the pact. I think the situations between you and Gandin, we can also maybe very soon take a look at the overview generally, but I think you have similarly strong positions. You are both in six civil and 3 military actions. Gandin has the better food income. You have the better science income. Gandin is slightly ahead in culture. Will maybe get one more Nostradamus seat. So maybe just because he has a tiny bit of a culture lead, he has a bit of an advantage. But he has lost the 2 yellow tokens to the wars. So that's of course also a downside. At the end, I do think the standings played a little bit of a part into this decision, because at this point the 2 4-player games were finished and Gandin got some nice results out of those. So I thought I maybe, with not being sure which player is the better position here, I offered it to you, as Gandin was at this point looking to be the potentially bigger contender for the first place with how the first 2 4-player games have been going. And
that makes sense. I do think the food is pretty significantly more valuable to me than it is to Gandin, though. So
no.
I was definitely very happy to accept the pact.
No, that's true. As with you having Maria Teresa, it's definitely nice to get the additional food. But also for Gandin, I think with how deep he is into his yellow bank, it would also be helpful for him the additional food. So at the end, I was still willing to offer to you. But of course, against Maria Teresa, you have to be careful about giving her more food to work with, as that is very important, and especially with you having delayed the food production now for a while, maybe it definitely could have been an idea to instead offer the pact to Gandin here. At the end, I start my turn with going for the coal. The Suez Canal is not in the row yet. It's, I think, unlikely that it will be taken away, but still, even with maybe still planning to go for the Suez Canal, getting coal upgrades on top of that, especially with having that many resources to spend this turn, is just quite nice. So I go for the coal. I will go for 1 upgrade. I have enough resource to potentially go for a second coal upgrade immediately, but especially now with also having the International Trade Agreement pact, I already have quite some decent resource production after going only upgrading 1 coal, so that I thought the additional science that I can get from alternatively upgrading 1 lab to scientific method is even more important. After developing the coal, I'm again down to 0 science, so I, instead of going for a second coal upgrade, went for a second lab upgrade here, and then I'm still not out of corruption, and I could maybe build some things. Maybe it could be an idea here to build something like a third irrigation farm, but there was one reason why I didn't want to spend any more additional resources, and that is that at the next turn there's maybe a decent chance that I could actually just take and finish the Suez Canal. I have only one wonder, the Colossus, so even if the Suez Canal is in the 2 civil action area, I could take it for 3 and finish it with 4 civil actions. So I wanted to leave myself with enough resource to just take and finish it, and with that just I made a decision to increase my population to get out of corruption. So I was quite happy to do all of those upgrades. Only downside is that I have now only 1 civil action left to take some cards, and I kinda would have liked to take maybe both the architecture and the opera, as the architecture I felt could be a very nice technology, especially with my plan of going for the Suez Canal. I could basically get the civil actions that I pay for playing it. I could get them back immediately, and then maybe have the ability to build very cheap operas. So I really kind of would have liked to go for the architecture, but I wasn't willing to take corruption or anything. Then I don't have enough resource to go for the Suez Canal anyway. And I also felt like, while the architecture could be nice, I'm still relatively low in science. A card like military theory could be extremely important for me, and for that I already need 11 science. So while it could be nice to have the architecture, with maybe also taking the opera, I at the end thought it's not too bad that I maybe miss out on it in the end. And if I indeed should get the Suez Canal, I also have an amount of resources that I can maybe build some of those operas at some point without the architecture, and still be fine with how many resources I have available. And I could have passed the opera, but I felt the opera is an extremely important technology to take here. I have missed out on the organized religion, and if I don't want to be completely dependent on bro sports and maybe Steve Jobs, I kind of have to take the opera to also have Chaplin and Marlene Dietrich available as solution for my happy faces, and also just as a way to maybe get into an age 3 leader and generate some culture. I have the iconoclasm seeded into the deck, so it could be that Napoleon gets removed very quickly, so being set up for as many leaders as possible is, I think, very important. So with now being faced on the decision between taking opera, architecture, and maybe also reserves, of course, could be a fine card, I at the end took the opera. Could have also just increased my population one more time, but I think the opera is just very important here. And then at the next turn, I thought maybe if I have the chance, it could be a nice option to just take and finish the Suez Canal. At the moment, I have the strategic territory in hand. However, I will get 3 draws at the end of my turn, meaning that I also have the chance to maybe potentially get another colony to have an alternative to the strategic territory.
Yeah, I agree. I think the opera is really important for you in this position.
Yeah. And luckily I've drawn the classic army tactic at a turn before, so not taking the cannons is not too bad here. And at the end of my turn I will draw 3 cards, 2 aggressions, the spy, the infiltrate, and also a colonization card. Now it is Gandin's turn. He will seed. This event was seeded by him, and it's the immigration, which also will give him at the end will give him the benefit with having the most happy faces. He will gain an additional population, which I think is very helpful for him here. He will then take the cannons for 2 civil actions. One thing that I didn't like about the opera was that it let the Harvard College fell down to in the 1 civil action area instead of staying in the 2 civil action area for Gandin. So he could have had the option to just take and finish it, but I at the end thought maybe he wants to take the cannons anyway, and then it's quite tricky to take the Harvard College. So at the end he doesn't even go for it. So that didn't make a big difference, and he will just build another team sports, gets more strength with that, more happy faces, and then takes the cannons in the wave of nationalism.
I think the Harvard College would be a little difficult for him to complete with only beyond 5 resource production and probably needing to put resources into, say, the military or other things. So
yeah, I
it
think
would be a little hard, I think.
Missing out on wave and cannons here would maybe be too greedy, even though he maybe could also use the science boost to maybe get an H3 government form, but probably just a bit too greedy here.
On my turn, I decided to seed the civil unrest. First of all, even though I am weakest again, I was again not going to be able to increase my strength on my turn anyway. I wasn't going to be playing the strategy. And also, so just in general, I like seeding. I also thought the civil unrest would be a nice card to have in the deck. I should be able to avoid getting hit by it with the organized religion, and I thought that you, with having missed out on any happy face solution except the opera, that the civil unrest may end up at least hitting you. not Gandin, but so I thought that just in general, I like seeding if I don't have a very good reason not to, and also that it might be a good card to have in the deck. And it ends up being a very consequential seed because I reveal the Iconoclasm right before the age ends, with Gandin having not ended the age, which means I ended up, I guess, getting pretty lucky. I mean, you keeping Napoleon is also, I think, pretty good for you, but definitely me losing Maria would have been quite a disaster for me. So that seed ended up working out quite well for me, I think.
I think I was still also somewhat happy to see it revealed because at the moment it looked like maybe Gandin or he actually knew about it. He had Nostradamus and maybe he could manage to nicely reveal it at the perfect time, maybe before he goes for Newton. So while maybe keeping Maria is nice for you, I was at least happy to see that now it is that I can keep Napoleon and Gandin can of course still go for Newton, but I was still somewhat happy to see it.
Yeah. I wish I could say that, I thought that Iconoclasm might have been in the deck because of the way that Nostradamus played, but I think that the way Gandin played didn't really reveal Iconoclasm because Newton was likely the best leader for him anyway. I mean, maybe because of the Iconoclasm, Gandin chose not to take Darwin last turn, but the other cards he took last turn were also important. I think Gandin managed to find a way to play it such that the Iconoclasm was not an obvious card.
No.
And you, of course, with already having Napoleon. Anyway, on my turn, I decided to finally get those farm upgrades going. I could have done the last mine, but I thought that especially with Maria, I delayed the farm upgrades way too much. So I think that's this is better late than never, perhaps. With my remaining 3 civil actions, I am also able to take the rich land. This will let me upgrade my last coal mine a lot easier. So I thought that this was a great deal to have only 1 civil action, which leaves me with 1 civil action left to go. And I think that that's also a pretty clear choice. Playing the turn this way means that I don't get the Harvard College, but as is with Gandin, I think that I just am not really in a position to be able to complete the Harvard College anytime soon, with me probably having to invest into military and other things pretty soon. So instead, just took the urban growth. I will at least have a guaranteed way to use it on the organized religion. Taking the urban growth along with the rich land means that I think that I would have been able to upgrade the organized religion even without the urban growth thanks to the rich land, but obviously making it cheaper is nice. It'll give me a little bit more resources, perhaps spend the military or something. And just, I thought that the engineering genius, I didn't know if I would be able to use it. I'm not going to get an H2 wonder in this game, and so without getting an H2 wonder, taking the H2 engineering genius is, I think, a little questionable, and so the urban growth is a much more guaranteed way for me to get value. Unfortunately, playing it this way means I will be vulnerable to an aggression from you, but I didn't really see a good way to avoid it. I mean, I could have played the strategy to guarantee avoid an aggression, but I thought that with me having so many draws and with me only needing 1 H2 bonus card to defend myself, I thought that getting the farm upgrades was more important, and I just hoped that either you didn't have an aggression or that you wouldn't play it because you thought that I probably had an H2 bonus card by now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Getting the food upgrades going is just way too important and allows even 2 population increases thanks to the 1 food from the pact. So we can see here that the food is maybe quite nice immediately thanks to the Hippocrates token. You can still increase your population 2 times. So I think that's definitely a situation where if you have no bonus card to defend yourself, you just have to take the risk and get your things going.
Right. And I have a chance to draw it too, obviously.
Yeah.
So I discard the bonus card that's going to be discarded at the end of the age anyway, and I draw. I think that's a raid or a plunder, another war over technology, and a politics of strength.
Yeah. So at my turn, before my turn, the age will end, so I will get a draw from the Colossus, which could also give me more options for my politics phase. And let's see what I will draw. I will get 2 copies of Mechanized Army and a War over Culture. And yeah, for that, with that, I had to decide what I want to do with the politics phase. I have only one event in hand, a strategic territory, and that I definitely want to keep in order to go for the Suez Canal. So when I first thought about my turn, I thought I just want to skip politics, develop the Suez Canal, get the strategic territory going, and then that's basically almost all of my turn. But then at the end I thought about if it maybe could be worth it to try an aggression against you if I have the spy in hand, which costs me 1 military action. First I thought, nah, I don't really want to do it. It's just very likely that you can defend anyway. I have no knowledge about colonies or some things that are coming where it could be very viable to remove the colonization cards from you. But then I thought, on the other hand, I will now get a strategic territory, so I will get a lot of H3 draws going. So normally it is a very heavy cost to maybe miss out on an H3 draw, but like this, I have at least I will get 5 from the strategic territory, and I thought maybe with that I have already the chance to get some nice cards, and it could maybe be worth it to either remove a colonization card from you, for which I think it wouldn't be worth it, but while it is very likely that you can defend, there's always at least a chance that maybe you didn't have drawn a defense card, so if you would be guaranteed to be able to defend, it would only be about maybe discarding some cards. I think I wouldn't be willing to sacrifice a draw here. Also, I think I wouldn't be willing to sacrifice a draw without a strategic territory, but with getting that many additional draws, I thought maybe it's worth a shot. At least losing a colonization card can still be a bit annoying. I will get a strategic territory, will be a bit stronger, and could maybe make it again a bit more difficult for future aggression, for you to defend against future aggressions. But I was not really that sure about the decision, but I felt there is always at least a chance to go through, and if defense card is removed, then it's maybe questionable if it was worth it, but at the end I made the decision to go for the aggression, and I do think you get quite a bit unfortunate here with not having the defense card, and with me at the end actually trying out the aggression and it going through. I do think those 5 signs is quite a big swing at this stage of the game, and I was of course very happy to see it, but yeah, I think it's an unfortunate outcome for you.
Yeah, well, it's how it goes sometimes.
No, so at the end, of course, I was very happy that I tried out the aggression. So I do think the maybe rather small chance of it being successful is always something that should also be considered. And then it's my turn. I will
But,
go for
but
the
I do agree with the strategic territory and the Colossus. You have so many H3 draws going already that missing out on one isn't a huge cost.
no. So I will in this turn go for the Suez Canal. There are some other options, maybe a Revolutionary Idea or something could be interesting, but I do think the Suez Canal will give me a strong enough boost, and getting 5 H3 draws is, I think, very strong, even though it could be a bit painful at the end of my turn, as I can only keep 3 of them in hand, and I have already 2 cards in hand that maybe I definitely want to keep, the Classic Army Tactic and the 1 War that I have drawn, so I might only keep 1 other card that I draw now, but still I have maybe the chance to filter and get a nice impact that fits my civilization. So I felt like the additional draws, if you get a strategic territory in H3, that's just potentially very powerful, and I wanted to get a Suez Canal going, finish it here, get a strategic territory, and of course I was very excited to see what cards I will draw, and I do again get some military heavy cards. I get 2 armed interventions, a hybrid war, a peace treaty, and then 1 impact, the impact of technology. So at the end of my turn it will be a tricky decision on what to keep. For my last civil action I will just increase my population, as I think that taking engineering genius might at some point still be nice for me, but it's just questionable whether I will be able to use it in time, and additionally it would make it that Newton falls down to 1 civil action for Gandin, so with that I think it's just a lot better to increase my population with the last civil action. Then I need to decide which cards to keep. I definitely want to keep the tactic. It could be important to have either with me, maybe if I get the military theory, still having some military potential on the offense, especially if I get air forces in combination with the classic army, but also potentially to defend myself. Could be nice to have this tactic available, even though the improved medieval army tactic is maybe also somewhat fine to be on, but I still wanted to keep the tactic. I wanted to keep 1 war, it could just be very bad. Getting the right cards like military theory and maybe air forces, and then not having the war in hand to pull something off. I could then maybe keep another war, maybe keep an aggression in hand, but at this point it's far from certain on whether I can maybe pull off something military heavy. So as the last card for that I want to keep, I choose the impact of technology. At the moment I have no H3 technology developed, but especially after getting the spy, the 5 science from the spy, I have now a strong amount of science, and maybe if I get something like multimedia or computers, I could have a chance to make that impact relatively big. And so those were the cards that I at the end kept in hand. But it was of course a little bit sad having to discard that many, but I think having filtered through that many cards and now having a war, a strong impact, and a tactic in hand is still not that bad. Then at the end of my
Yep, I
turn,
agree with that.
yeah, at the end of my turn, I will draw 2 cards. While it is on one hand true that maybe playing the spy and then is justified with me drawing that many cards, I still can only keep so few cards in hand. So maybe now having the chance to maybe draw another neutral impact that I can seed relatively safely could still be nice. But now I'm getting 2 draws, and I again get some military heavy draws, another war over culture, and a raid. So if I get a military theory, maybe there is the potential to go for a military heavy route in this position. Also at this point we are at the beginning of H3, so maybe we can take a quick look at the overview. After having finished the Suez Canal, I think I maybe have now the strongest economy, I have the most civil actions, I have tied with you the most science production. You of course have a little bit of additional science thanks to Maria Theresa, but because of the spy I have now also a lot more science saved up. I have by far the biggest resource production at the moment, and while I have only irrigation farms, I still have a very nice yellow bank, but I'm still missing a happy face solution, so I felt like I have a strong economy, but I still need to overcome a culture gap, and there are some cards that I might heavily rely on. Military theory, professional sports, or in general getting a solution for my happy faces will be important things for me to get during H3, so I felt like my position has a lot of potential, but also the potential to maybe fail very heavily if I maybe get stuck on a low amount of military actions and there will be a military push by someone else, or if I maybe just don't find a nice way to get a happy face solution going. But generally, I felt like my position has a potential, but because I'm still behind in culture, I still felt like it's a game where every player has still everything to play for. How did you think about your position in at this point of the game?
Yeah, I guess I felt kind of in between you and Gandin in that I think my economy is better than Gandin's. I have more science and resource production and our and also a little bit more food production, even thanks to the pact. Um, and I also my military situation right now looks the same. Maybe it'll be a bit easier for me to get something going with upgraded tactic, although maybe Gandin has a tactic to get some military going. On the other hand, Gandin has the culture lead right now, not by that much though. Pretty decent about my position. I felt that even though I don't have the strongest economy, I at least have, I think, the second strongest. So I'm sort of in the middle in both my economy and my culture, and I think it's not really a huge difference in either direction either. So I thought that if I could, you know, that I at least had pretty good chances to win or get second at this point, depending on how H3 went.
Yeah. So definitely, I think a close game where every player still has chances to win at this point. And Gandin seats, opens the immigration, which hits both of us. I have one more discontent worker, but luckily for the immigration, it doesn't make a difference whether you have one or two, so we will both lose one population during our turn. Gandin then goes
Yeah.
for a very late Newton, goes for scientific methods, and has after going for Newton, thanks to Newton's ability, one civil action left at the end of his turn that he can use to take the urban growth to have a bit more resource available. At least doing all of this meant that he couldn't take the most cards of the row, meaning that I was hoping that maybe I could still have the chance to get at least one of those 3 science yellow cards that are coming down the row.
Also a little interesting that Gandon chose to take the urban growth instead of upgrading his last mine. Maybe he's planning to perhaps destroy the bronze mine to get a little bit of extra population.
Yeah, that could definitely be a reason, depending on how I have just gotten the strategic territory. So maybe he was a bit worried that I have some wars in hand, which is also the case. And if I get a military theory, maybe it could get a military heavy H3, and he didn't want to commit to the upgrade. So that could be the case.
It would be a late upgrade anyway. On my turn, I decided not to seed. I'm weakest, and I'm going to fix that during my turn. And none of the cards in my hand I particularly wanted in the next deck anyway. There are a lot of strength events that are risky, a territory, I don't have any bonus cards. So Instead, I decided to fix my happy face situation, especially important because I know that there's a civil unrest that I seeded in the deck. Unfortunately, the emigration, I didn't have a free population, so I had to destroy something. I decided to destroy my bronze mine. I figured that with the rich land in my hand, even if I want to build a third coal mine at some point, I will be able to do it relatively cheaply. And when going through my turn, as we'll see, I think I end up building a third army, and so I didn't want to lose any of my units because I'll have just enough population to build a third army, and so I thought that the bronze mine was my least valuable population right now. So after upgrading my temple, as I say, use frugality to increase my population twice and put both of them into military. This makes me at least ahead of Gandin in strength, protects me from any further attacks you might make against me, aggressions. So that felt pretty important. Also uses Maria's resource. So that felt kind of necessary. Unfortunately, it means that I'm going to be losing out on 2 H3 draws, but I just thought that fixing my strength situation a little bit was more important. And that also means that I have 2 civil actions left to take, with which I can take both of these science yellow cards to help me recover more from the spy that I got hit with. So I think even in retrospect, this looks like the right turn to me.
Yeah, I think it makes totally sense. I think after getting hit by the spy, you are really basically forced to increase your strength, as otherwise it could just mean that you get hit by another aggression. With it now being visible that you don't have any H2 defense cards in hand, and I think that's just the best way to do so, and at least you can still get those 2 strong yellow cards, so it looks like a perfectly solid and straightforward turn.
And the card I draw is a Plunder.
Yeah. At my turn, I have 1 impact in hand, the impact of technology, and I will this turn make a bit of a commitment, or I will go for Einstein this turn. I have the impact of technology in hand, which works very nicely together with Einstein, and I also thought I need to somehow transform my economy into culture. There's a spaceflight, the Manhattan Project in the game, and I might have the ability to just build up a very booming economy when going for Einstein. Doing so has also some disadvantages, of course, because I will lose the military action from Napoleon, so it is a big commitment. Also, I lose the ability to go for one of the happy face leaders, which could be especially viable if the pro sports are denied or maybe late in the deck. So it was a committed decision, but with doing the decision, I was willing to see the impact of technology. Maybe I could also keep it in hand, as I maybe you could benefit from it if it is revealed later on. But on the other hand, hopefully it will take a little bit of time. Maybe I have the ability to develop some technologies until then. And with going for Einstein, it will go down to 2 military actions, so it's really difficult to keep all cards in hand. I still want to keep a tactic and a war, so I seeded the impact of technology into the deck. Then the Ravages of Time is revealed. Luckily, that one got revealed during age 3, and so it's quite a nice timing now. I lose the Colossus, but it is at this point fine for me, even though it still limited my turn a little bit because the 2 strength in some variations that I tried out would have saved me from potentially getting hit by an aggression. So maybe it could have still been nice to have it, but I do think the turn that I will end up going for here is also still fine. And no, I just think at this turn there's a lot of interesting stuff available, which at the end made it that I will actually take some risks here, because there is also the first copy of Air Forces in the row, which could be a very important technology to have. I have the classic army tactic, which is without Air Forces not that great of a strength solution, and yeah, so it could be very nice to take the Air Force here, but there are so strong cards available in engineering, civil service, patriotism, revolutionary idea, so that I felt that I am, yeah, maybe at the end I can be fine with at least having the classic army tactic without air forces, and so I was willing to go for a more risky line. I take the engineering, I also take the civil service, those 2 cards I wanted to have for certain, as I have maybe enough science to support both of them. I thought about building a third lab. and then developing the engineering first in order to save some resources. But I figured that developing the civil service, even if I should build a lab, is maybe more valuable with getting 2 additional actions immediately. And yeah, while I considered building the third lab, when I don't go for Einstein, as then maybe with keeping Napoleon, I'm perfectly fine with the amount of strength that I'm having. But I, at the end, came to the conclusion that I want to go for Einstein. I have a big amount of science saved up. I will get more science production immediately. And I was willing to go for him, but it is a risky decision as I will now go down to 2 military actions. I am very reliant on maybe the professional sports as a happy face solution, and I could definitely get punished for that. But if I don't go for him, then I mean I'm not that far behind in culture, so it's but I felt like now I can already start generating some culture with Einstein, and I was hoping that with me at least having a tactic in hand, that I will be able to defend potential strength pushes, as maybe it will take at least a while until you or Gandin will set up for a potential strength push, and maybe until then I have some chances to get military theory or maybe fundamentalism as an alternative. So a risky decision, but I also think it gives me a nice boost immediately. I will elect Einstein after having built another knight so that I am not in danger of an aggression after electing Einstein. I considered for a moment maybe that I can be willing to not rebuild the knight and then still go for a third lab to have even more science production, but I felt at the end, it felt to me like it is an unnecessary risk, and with having no defense card in hand, so I just stayed on 2 labs for now. With Einstein now I'm at least at 8 science production. I will develop the civil service, and those additional actions will allow me to take both revolutionary idea and the patriotism, having even more science to develop technologies, and also the patriotism with me being now at, for the moment, on 2 military actions is a very important card, I think. I could have still taken, instead of revolutionary idea and patriotism, just the air forces. Maybe it would be a bit safer. It's definitely a greedy line, but maybe with me having that many actions, also the H3 won't last that long, and maybe for the turns that it will last, I have a chance to be fine, at least from the defensive perspective. On the other hand, I have some war still in hand, so if I get a military theory, I might have some chances to pull something off with the military. But with Einstein and there being some potential payoff wonders available and the impact of technology coming, I felt like I don't necessarily need to rely on something military heavy, especially because I don't know when the military theories will be available. So at the end, I was willing to skip the air forces, but definitely a questionable decision, and a decision that could backfire quite heavily. But on the other hand, those 2 yellow cards really give me a big amount of value to be at least a little bit safer. I at the end took the tanks, which might be potentially a nice way to get my strength going, also without needing new population. Just being able to upgrade those knights to tanks could be nice, but also just as a cheap, relatively cheap technology for Einstein, it could be nice. And also at this point, I was a little bit afraid of potential happy face related events that could be coming. Immigration is already out, so as a bad event, there's basically only the civil unrest left. But I felt like it could be an event that could be revealed, and instead of, if I, for example, increased my population instead of taking the tanks, I would get hit by it harder. So it was an interesting turn because I felt like I have a lot of options, lots of strong cards available. At the end, I went with a risky line, but also a line that I think gives my position quite a big boost, with now being on 9 civil actions, having Einstein, being prepared for the impact of technology, and if I don't get punished by the military, I felt like this could maybe give me a boost that is strong enough to potentially give me good winning chances at the end.
Yeah, I think that your turn is kind of one of these, like, you have to decide which route you want to take to winning the game, either military or peacefully. And I feel that with taking Einstein and with passing up the air forces, you're basically signaling you're looking to win the game peacefully. I agree that's definitely possible to do, even with being at a cultural deficit. Einstein helps a lot. There's the space flight on the deck. The one thing that, looking at your turn again, maybe I question a little bit is taking the engineering. I feel that you have a lot of resource income already, and maybe that civil action, and you could find another civil action to free up to perhaps say either upgrade another coal mine, or maybe even just build an opera this turn, which would not only let you avoid the civil unrest, but also, if you're already sort of committing to this peaceful line with Einstein, I think getting a little bit of extra culture protection going with opera this turn would help a lot there. So I was wondering if you considered that at all.
No, I think I didn't consider it that much. I felt like the engineering could just be quite strong potentially. Maybe if I build 2 or 3 operas, and maybe something like multimedia, I'll go for computer upgrades. It can easily save me 6, 8, potentially even more resources. It's nice for put some impact. So I maybe it's not necessarily needed. It's true that I have very strong resource production, and maybe I can at the end spend the action for something different. But on the other hand, with the impact of technology coming, it's also not bad to already have another technology in hand that I can maybe just develop, that I have now a chance to get for one, and is also somewhat useful for me. So at the end, engineering was basically one of the things during my turn that I really wanted to do. But maybe I could have considered it a little bit more, even though I think I would probably still take it, as the amount of resources it can save me is still quite high. And during age 3, even with having big resource production, sometimes you still can use even more resources if I go for some upgrade to tanks that already takes some resource away, and then building operas or multimedias or movies. As then could potentially be quite difficult even with the big resource production that I'm having. So I think it's still a card that has too much potential so that I don't want to miss out on it. But yeah, maybe we can maybe see how much it will end up doing, and if maybe it could have been better to pass on that civil action. Maybe also pass on tanks and then take the air forces or something in that direction. So yeah, definitely a consideration.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely one of those difficult, like, how do I want to play the rest of these game turns? So it's really hard to say which cards are more important.
No. I at the end was thinking that Einstein gives me a lot of potential, but on the same time I was also very worried about maybe not getting military theory or a happy face solution at the right time. Then it's Gandin's turn. He will see it, and a popularization of science is revealed. I was happy to see it, as I now it does make a big difference, but I get a little bit of additional science culture out of it after having increased my science production with Einstein. Gandin will go for air forces, builds one, goes for upgrading a lab, takes the revolutionary idea, the urban growth. Because of having to destroy the library with the Ravages of Time, he doesn't have the hand space to take another card, so with the last civil action will just increase his population, so increases his strength, making sure to be the strongest, which on the other hand will give you at your turn some additional resources that you can use. And then we are at your turn.
So on my turn, because I'm not weakest now, I win the tie with you. I decide to seed. The card I seeded was a little difficult, but maybe not so much. Without having any bonus cards still to develop territory felt too risky, and refugees also felt risky. So I decided to seed the international agreement. I thought that first of all, even if I'm weakest, at least I don't get hurt by it. And I also think of all the H2 strength events, the international agreement is kind of tricky. It can obviously be very powerful to get those extra cards with civil actions, but giving up your political action, especially in age 3, can be a very huge cost. So I think it's often not even accepted. So I thought that because I wanted to seed, I felt that of the 3 events in my hand, it was the least likely to affect me negatively, and maybe even if I didn't get it, it wouldn't help the strongest opponent that much. And so I revealed an event that I was definitely happy to see in the deck, the Good Harvest. Not only does it give me the most food, but it also helps me a lot with Maria. As for my turn, unfortunately, the Ravages of Time hurts me a pretty significant amount, taking me down to 5 civil actions. I do want to rebuild my coal mine. It's a little late in the game to rebuild a mine like this, but I do have the rich land to make it a bit cheaper. I can rebuild it only for 5 rocks, so it'll repay for itself in 2 turns at least, and I'm probably not going to have a better opportunity. Maybe instead of rebuilding the coal mine, I could have potentially built a 3rd farm instead with the rich land. That would have cost less rocks and given me even more value with Maria. I think that's not something I necessarily considered a lot on my turn, but now that I'm looking at it now, it could have been a very viable choice for sure. On the other hand, the 3rd coal mine will also help me a lot, obviously. With limited amount of civil actions, I might not be able to get a lot of help from the yellow cards in age 3. And so even though you can often supplement rock income with yellow cards in age 3, maybe that'll be more difficult for me unless I can get an H3 government form going, which I might not be able to. But anyway, so looking at it again, perhaps again third farm would have been better, but I decide to rebuild the third mine instead. I can then get out of corruption by increasing my population a second time, and then after playing the strategy and building a fourth swordsman with my mirror resource, investing me pretty heavily into swordsman, but I didn't have an alternate tactic in my hand anyway, so I thought that, especially with you going down to 2 military actions, I thought that at least for the time being, and not having air forces, that you were not threatening too much, at least in the near-term future. Gandin was perhaps threatening a bit more, but he at least hasn't revealed another tactic yet beyond the Legion, and also was only on 3 military actions. So I thought that with war potential from you and Gandin right now not looking too threatening, perhaps staying just on this upgraded medieval army tactic wouldn't be the end of the world. And again, at least I'm spending the Maria resource. This also makes me strongest after my turn. And with my last civil action, I take the movies. So at this point in the game, I was a little looking towards how could I potentially win this game. My economy is still looking pretty good, though I have limited amount of civil actions. But I am still behind Gandin in culture, and I need to find a way to make up for that pretty soon. And if I look at the leaders left in H3, we can see that 3 of them are already on the row that I did not have the civil actions to take while doing the other things I wanted to do on my turn. And I didn't necessarily want any of them anyway. Churchill could be nice, but I wasn't sure if I would be able to pull off a war. I don't have a war in my hand. I don't have a tactic in my hand. I don't know if I'll be able to get the air forces. So I didn't really want to commit to a military strategy necessarily. Gandhi, I felt I didn't need to protect myself, and also I really wanted my H3 leader to give me culture. Steve Jobs, I didn't have a ton of science income, so looking towards the other leaders I could get, 2 of them are leaders that really want movies, Marlena and Chaplin. So I thought that for that reason, I also, with the coal mines, maybe another reason why I bought the coal mine was I was planning to go for movies, even though I won't have an engineering or anything to make them cheaper. With my resource production, it should be reasonably plausible for me to get a couple movies going, along with Chaplin or Milena, perhaps getting me closer to win the game. Now, the unfortunate thing about the situation is the Hollywood as a wonder was on the road pretty early, and I didn't have the leeway to take it, and so now it's been discarded. And so the remaining wonders that I could potentially get would be the Red Cross, Empire State Building, and spaceflight. I'm also passing up on the Manhattan Project, which, again, I didn't feel that I had the leeway to take. And so none of the wonders left in the game necessarily are great with movies. I mean, maybe Empire State Building potentially, but I just thought that again, with me looking towards the H3 leaders I could get, with 2 of them wanting movies, it felt like a really important card for me to take, even though the reserves with the patriotism or even the engineering genius were also hard yellow cards to pass up. This definitely felt, even at the time, like a weak turn to me. I'm just not sure if I had much better options. I guess maybe another option would have been perhaps building the 3rd farm and maybe aiming to get the Red Cross, but with being on 5 civil actions and not having engineering or architecture, the Red Cross is also would be a little hard to get a lot of value off of. Yeah, it still feels like a weak turn in retrospect, but I'm not sure if another immediately obvious better turn is jumping out at me. Maybe finding a way to take the democracy, but I also, because I have the revolutionary idea, but again, I didn't really have the civil actions for the democracy.
Yeah, I think at the end it's maybe the best turn you can come up with. I do think it's nice to use the rich land to build something now that you have it in hand, either farm or mine. I think the building the mine is perfectly fine, and then we can now maybe see that the Ravages of Time is actually a very hurtful event for you, even though you get the culture production. I think having the additional civil action to maybe now take one of those yellow cards in addition to the movie would definitely be worth more for you than 2 cultures. So now we can maybe just see the negative consequences of the Ravages of Time for you.
Right. I think because I lost the pyramids, I think that I maybe should have tried to prioritize that H3 government form. So if I could have found a version of the turn that ended with me taking democracy, which I will have enough science to play next turn with the revolutionary idea, that definitely would have been really nice to do. Maybe there was a version of the turn that could have done that, and then by playing democracy next turn, I fix my civil action issue. I'll have to find a way to navigate with the happy face, but maybe if I take the movies too, I'll be able to. Well, I won't have the science for it, but I would at least be able to perhaps increase my population, live off of having an unhappy worker. Both of the unhappy worker events are out of the deck, so maybe in retrospect, finding a version of the turn that involved taking the democracy could have been preferable. Now, on the other hand, there are still this is only the first Age of the Government form on the row, so maybe I was thinking, even if I don't get this copy of democracy, maybe the second copy or the communism or even the fundamentalism will be available for me later. So it would also be a pretty significant cost to take the democracy, but I also think that it would fix the major issue with my position right now, which is my civil actions. So perhaps finding a way to take it, I should have at least tried harder to find a way to take it on this turn.
Yeah, democracy would definitely be a big help for you. I think with there still being all of the other copies of the H3 government forms in the deck, maybe it would be too costly to take one for 3, but on the other hand, it would guarantee that you can maybe go for the next turn. But I think it's maybe it's a bit too expensive, even though it's really could be really strong for you. So maybe you are right that maybe some turns should at least be considered to somehow implement it.
Yeah, difficult turn for sure. Anyway, the cards I draw were Impact of Wonders, Impact of Progress, and Entrenchments. One neutral impact, one impact that I probably can't play, or at least that would be much better for you than for me.
Yeah. Then it's my turn. I can't really use my politics phase. I don't have enough military actions to go for war, and I don't have any impact in hand, so I just skip the politics phase here. And in this turn was a little bit clearer for me than the turn before, where I had just a big variety of options. Now that I have maybe committed to a more science-heavy line with the impact of technology coming, me having Einstein, I just really wanted to get those computers going, go really big on the science production. There's still a chance that I might get a space flight at some point, so I made a decision to go for the computers. Here we can already see that maybe the engineering is, at least for now, not doing that much, because the first line that I considered was to go for computers, play revolutionary idea, go for the engineering, go for some upgrades, but then it's more difficult for me to get out of corruption, and there are some really strong yellow cards available for me for one civil action that I didn't want to pass or miss out on, and with that I at the end made a decision to not go for the engineering for now and just go for the computers upgrades without the engineering. It would only save me 1 resource per upgrade anyway, so I will just develop the computers, go for 2 upgrades, and thanks to still having a lot of blue tokens lying around on the bronze mines, those 2 upgrades are actually enough to get me out of corruption, and with that I have enough civil actions to just take all of those yellow cards. I was happy to get all of those yellow cards. Maybe that is a result of you and Gandin not having the most civil actions to work with, and now I can use my civil actions very efficiently, take the reserves, the patriotism, another copy of reserves. I just wanted to get all of those cards now that I have the chance to get them for 1 civil action. Just gives me a lot of options for the following turns. Of course, it's also a bit civil action intensive, but I felt like I had enough civil actions to just spend 3 of them to take those cards, and felt that it leaves me very flexible and just with a lot of economical power and the ability to build a lot of urban buildings or maybe some military, depending on what cards will be available for me at the following turns. Then I have 1 civil action left. I could just increase my population. I have already a bunch of food saved up, but at this point there were some reasons to not increase my population. One I stated already the turn before. I felt like maybe the civil unrest could be one of the events in the deck which would hit me harder when I now increase my population, but one of the wonders that is in the deck is also the Red Cross, and I felt with me having the engineering and now out of the sudden having that much amount of food saved up, also having the reserves in hand, it could definitely be an option if I'm not too much under pressure militarily to just take the Red Cross, develop the engineering, play reserves for food, and then finish the Red Cross. So I wanted to leave myself this option open as well. So instead of increasing my population with the last civil action, I think I just played the revolutionary idea, having that already out of the way, having more science, having a free hand space again, and being prepared for both Red Cross nicely as well as the space flight. And I was then mainly looking forward to maybe getting a copy of Military Theory soon, maybe Professional Sports. Those could be nice cards for me to get. So I will be a little bit dependent on those, depending on maybe also whether there will be a strength increase or not. I have drawn an H3 colonization card, so I can be able to stay at 22 strength while not being in danger of an aggression. And culture-wise, I'm already getting a bit closer with the production at the end of my turn. I'm only 11 culture behind you, and 23 culture behind Gandin, so I'm at this point with having already gotten some culture out of Einstein, not that far behind in culture, and thought that if my position remains unpunished, if I can just convert this into a space flight or Red Cross without getting punished, I could have good chances to win. But if I have to struggle to increase my strength, it could still be a very fragile and potentially dangerous position for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had considered maybe building an opera this turn just to get some cultural production going earlier, but I guess if your concern was mostly that you felt as long as you could protect yourself, you should be able to win with Einstein and a Big Wonder, then that makes more sense because the yellow cards definitely are a much safer in terms of military to let you potentially defend against a war from Gandin or me.
Yeah, I felt with impact of technology coming and me having Einstein, the investment into computers will hopefully give me an amount of culture that maybe won't be as good as the operas just in culture, but maybe there could be other impacts or the space flight. And then I was hoping that it will, on one hand, maybe leave me a bit more flexible and with not committing any population anywhere, and hopefully also will score me a nice amount of culture. Also, the opera would be a technology that I developed that isn't an H3 technology, which could be a bit bad for the impact of technology as well. And so at the end, I didn't consider it too much. And one advantage, of course, would be that I would be better prepared for civil unrest, which was, as I said, one of the cards that I was a bit worried about. So that could be a good argument in favor of maybe going for one opera.
All right.
At the end of my turn, I draw 2 cards, and I was happy to see one impact that is playable or even good for me, the impact of government. At the moment, it's looking quite strong, but maybe there could be the chance that one or both of you could go for an H3 government form at some point, but I might also get the military theory, so I was happy to have drawn this impact that I might be able to see it at some point. Now it's Gandin's turn, and looking at Gandin's turn, I thought, the democracy could be a very nice improvement for him, but sadly, or luckily, sadly for him, he doesn't have enough science to go for it immediately, but sadly for me, that changed with the event that was revealed. That event is the Cold War, and I was not too happy to see it, because I do think that with being able to go for the democracy already this turn, instead of having to wait another turn, Gandin gets quite a big boost going, and he will use the science to indeed go for the democracy, develop it, increase his population, has the defensive army tactic, which makes him the weakest, allowing him to play the wave of nationalism for 6 resources, and then he will go for Churchill, and thanks to his 3 additional science and his ability, he will be able to develop the cannons, and then also has more than enough resources to build some units, which makes him then actually quite strong with being at 38 strength. I have to see how I can defend against that amount of strength, so he maybe also sees that with me having that many resources in science, he maybe needs to force me to build some military, especially if I don't get a military theory. It could be quite awkward for me to respond to that, so I felt like that was quite a strong turn for him, doing a bit of pressure militarily, getting this democracy, fixing the actions, getting some culture reduction going, so I think quite a strong turn.
Yeah, definitely a power turn from him.
And then
as for my turn, yeah, so I decided to see the impact of wonders. It's a neutral impact. I wanted to see that while not only am I not weakest, but I also know that there's the civil unrest. I actually know exactly what card is going to be revealed, which is the civil unrest. So I knew that it would.
So my fears sadly came true. With the civil unrest was actually in the deck at the end.
But I also have to worry about potential military aggressions from Gandin, since I am I still don't have any bonus cards in my hand, and he could try it against me, especially knowing from your spy that I don't have any H2 bonus cards in my hand. And so it was a little bit of a this turn was a little bit tricky, trying to figure out like how could I defend myself. I really wanted to build the movies this turn, but I thought that it would be way too risky to do so with Gandin's strength push, and it was a little hard for me too because while I could build another knight to go up to 33 strength, I guess that would be enough to defend, but I ended up deciding to push even a little bit harder by taking not only Marlena, who I think is probably the strongest leader for me. I mean, Chaplin would give me probably more culture than Marlena, but Marlena also helps me with my strength situation, and Gandin was maybe looking a little bit threatening too. So I decided that by electing Maria, I could actually disband a unit of knights to one unit of knights and one unit of swordsmen to build 2 air forces, which would actually make me strongest. And now, maybe in retrospect, I did know that the card that I had seeded was the international agreement, so I know that there is a card in the deck that rewards being strongest. That being said, in retrospect, this might have been a bit too much of an investment into becoming strongest, especially disbanding 2 units to do it, even though I'm sort of redistributing those units better into air forces. Maybe this wasn't necessary. I mean, I spent, even with the Maria resources, I spent 11 rocks into it that could have been in movies instead. I do think probably taking the air forces, maybe looking in retrospect, maybe I didn't need the air forces. I mean, it's hard to say, but like you are not really threatening any wars with only 2 military actions. Gandin only has 3. Now, maybe if you got a military theory, you could start threatening a war against me, but if you got a copy of air forces too, that would definitely be a big risk, but also the game is probably going to end soon. There aren't that many cards left in the deck. And it could also be said that while this is the safest line for me and that it gets me additional strength, I got the air forces going, it's also maybe like if I play it this way, I have no chance of winning the game just because I am so far behind. I'm 20 culture. Well, I'm going to be 15 culture behind Gandin at the end of my turn, but Gandin also has more culture production than me going, has a stronger economy than me, I would say, at this point with those civil actions. I'm also spending 12 science on the air forces that could have been spent on maybe an HD government form instead. There's a communism on the road that I probably wouldn't have been able to take this turn for 3 civil actions, but maybe next turn I could take it. Now, with the revolution idea, I will have enough science to play the communism this turn, but I won't have enough science to play it with the movies, which I really need to get going soon if I want to have any chance of getting enough culture to not finish last, especially with there not really being a great wonder left in the deck for me, perhaps. So I think maybe while this was the safest line, it was also like a line that maybe safely loses me the game, and instead I should have tried to find a way to maybe build a movies this turn, just build another knights to protect me from an aggression, skip the air forces perhaps, and just hope that like you and Gandin won't be able to find a good way to get enough military actions to threaten a war against me, especially as Marlena. Maybe I can get a little bit of extra strength from that, and just maybe if the only hope for me in this game is getting movies going this turn with Marlena so that I can get some cultural protection going, then I should have gone for that and left myself a little more vulnerable militarily.
Yeah, definitely a tough decision. I do think the turn looks solid, but when we take a look at the situation at the end of your turn, now that Gandin has those 8 civil actions, it just feels like maybe your position doesn't have the power now after the investment into air forces to yeah, to just generate enough culture and prepare well enough for the impacts to then maybe have a good shot at winning the game. So maybe you are right that you should have taken some risks here, but it's definitely a tough call. At least Gandin can't go for military theory at his next turn. Maybe you can hope that somehow he can pull off something against me, for example, if military theories are late. So I think also maybe it could have been worth it to try something with movies or play it a bit more risky, and then maybe if you don't get punished for the more risky play, you could have then with the bigger culture production a situation where you go into the final impacts with having scored more culture. So a tough decision again, but maybe it could have been worth it, but I also didn't try out concrete variations for the turn. So
Yeah, I think I might have had a little bit of PTSD from the second four-player game in the group.
yeah.
But yeah, I think, as you say, like the turn in and of itself, I think is fine. But looking at the situation in the game, it does seem like how do I intend to overtake Gandin and culture by playing the turn this way? It looks like it might be impossible. So yeah, I think maybe just in terms of uh like if the only way I have of winning is to build movies this turn and just kind of hope that I don't get punished militarily, that's definitely what I should have done.
Yeah, so a tough decision. And then you will, at the end of your turn, I think, draw one new card.
Yep, it's an impact of colonies.
Mm-hmm. So a card that probably won't get seeded, or at least it's a very strong impact for me. And
Yep.
then it's my turn. I could have seeded the impact of government here, but this turn I will develop two H3 technologies, meaning that the impact of technology will get improved by quite a bit. And additionally, I will spend all of my military actions this turn, as I am kind of forced to react to the strength increase from both Gandin and you. And there's no military theory on the row, so I won't have any more impacts available at my next turn anyway. And I just have the chance now to increase my impact of technology by plus 8 points during this turn. So I at the end skipped my politics phase. And this turn was again a tricky one for me, as there are 3 wonders in the row, actually the last 3 wonders, so I have to make a decision on which wonder do I want to go for, and I also have to make a decision on which save do I want to play it in regards of my military and how much risk am I willing to take. The first variations that I thought about, I just focused a bit more on building up some military, and at the end I just found myself with enough civil actions to maybe take something like Empire State Building, but I felt like the Empire State Building could be a bit tricky and maybe isn't strong enough at the end to give me good chances to win the game. I thought about the Red Cross. I have the possibility to, after developing the tanks, develop the engineering, play the reserves, take and finish the Red Cross, and I could still go for at least 2 upgrades to tanks and finish the Red Cross immediately, which would, I think, even give me the culture lead together with the culture that I get for developing the engineering. So that could be extremely strong. But it would also mean that I would leave myself in a position where I am not able to defend against an aggression and could potentially get hit by a double aggression. I thought about it if maybe it could be worth it to take that risk, but I do think there's an alternative that is just maybe similarly as strong, where I'm not that much in danger, and that is with taking the space flight, which at the end of the game maybe gives me a similar amount of points than the Red Cross. Of course, it costs some resources, maybe meaning that I can't build as many operas or multimedias or whatever I maybe want to build at some point to generate some culture. But on the other hand, I will have more population available, which also will be important if I don't go for the Red Cross. And so with the space flight, with not needing to finish it this turn, I have more actions available to defend myself, so I can go for tanks. And after taking the space flight, I can still play the patriotism, go for one more upgrade, and I can take and develop the satellites, being better prepared for the impact of technology that I've seeded, also being better prepared for potential impact of progress and impact of variety. And with that, I have an amount of strength that with my 1H3 defense card, I can at least defend against one aggression, not against a double aggression. But I was hoping that maybe that won't be happening. So yeah, the space flight might have the potential to give me a 30 plus culture at the end, and thanks to my big resource production and maybe also the engineering, that could still save me some resources. I maybe can also, with the reserves that I have in hand, still have enough resources to build some urban buildings while still being able to finish the space flight. So at the end, that was the turn that I came up with, but I was a bit worried because of the strength increases that were going on, and with me still being stuck onto military actions. But on the other hand, I was hoping that at the next turn, hopefully, there will be one of the 2 copies of military theory available, which then will make me quite a bit safer and maybe allows myself to get one last draw from the H3 cards to maybe have a chance to get one more impact going. And yeah, so also taking the space flight removes it from Gandin, and the Red Cross is now still available, which he might take, but it's not that great for him. And the space flight, I think, maybe could have been better. On the other hand, he doesn't have that many resources saved up, so if he finishes the space flight, he can't do a lot else. But yeah, if I just take and finish the Red Cross, I felt I'm too vulnerable. If I just go for the Empire State Building and maybe do more stuff for my military, I am felt I'm not well enough prepared to score enough points. At the end, I felt the space flight could be strong, and I was happy that I had a chance to take it, as it might be a very strong wonder for me, and I have now the chance to get a big payoff wonder together with the Einstein and science strategy that I committed myself towards.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree it's somewhat of a difficult decision, but it looks like the spaceflight will give you a lot of culture. You know the impact of technology is in the deck, so the culture difference you have with Gandin isn't as big as it might seem at first glance. And also, yeah, at the moment the red cross doesn't look great for Gandin anyway, so yeah, I can definitely see a double aggression would be pretty brutal for you, and I do indeed have one aggression in my hand. So if you hadn't defended yourself, maybe Ganon would have aggressed you, and then I would have seen it would have worked, and then I would have aggressed you, and then that would have maybe ruined your position. So I think that it's definitely possible you would have been hit by a double aggression if you hadn't done this.
Yeah, so I think that was very important. There were a bunch of cards that I also kind of wanted to take, like the Endowment, maybe the Mechanized Agriculture, so cheap technology, and also for potential help for impact of agriculture and balance later on, but I just at the end didn't have the free civil actions to take them. At the end of my turn, I had to make a tough decision, because I need to keep my defense card in order to defend myself against aggressions, but then I have to make a decision between keeping the classic army tactic and keeping the impact of government, which could be a nice impact for me. And at the end, I made a decision to discard a classic army tactic here. It's a tough decision, but I have now missed out on both copies of Air Forces, definitely also to my own fault, as I had a chance to take one for 3 earlier. And without Air Forces, the upgraded medieval army tactic is actually not that much worse than the classic army. With Air Forces, the classic army definitely gets a lot better, but without them, especially as I'm at the moment in 3 medieval army tactics, upgraded medieval armies, I felt like it maybe doesn't help me that much anyway, and hopefully I will be fine without it, and I just couldn't. I think discarding the impact here, which gives me 3 culture for seeding and some potential more points, with me having a lot of civil actions and hopefully soon also the military theory, just felt like something that I can't really allow myself, even if it means discarding the tactic.
I agree.
Then I sadly don't draw any cards. It's Gandin's turn. He will go for the red cross, it's the last possible wonder that he could go for, is willing to destroy a religion, interestingly, in order to build an additional rifleman, which could mean that maybe he has an aggression in hand and just wants to go for some pressure. There is no H2 event left, so there can be no strength events, apart of course from the impact of strength, which maybe could also be an indicator that the one impact that he has seeded could be the impact of strength. Maybe it's just to be prepared for some aggressions, or if the age shouldn't end, he has enough science to go for military theory, so also maybe a war is not out of the question. And then he goes for the reserves and builds one step of the red cross with the reserves. I think he just guarantees to maybe be able to finish the red cross, or to build 2 more stages, even if the age ends and he loses the other copy of reserves, and he still gets out of corruption.
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable turn from him.
Yeah, and then we are at your turn.
Yeah. So I didn't want to see any of the cards in my hand. The developed territory and the refugees. Refugees looked like it would help Gandin. Developed territory. I mean, I could see it just for 2 culture, but I thought that maybe if one of you won it, it would help you out. And both of the impacts in my hand were not good for me, so I decided to just to not seed this turn. After building 1 stage of the Red Cross, I decided to finally build a movie. I have just enough resources to do that this turn, which leaves me with 1 civil action left to play, and I decided to go ahead and take the military buildup. Just Gandin is definitely looking to be threatening a little bit. Now, you might choose to end the age, but I thought that to end the game. But with Gandin having such a huge cultural lead right now, I thought that there was also a good chance he would choose not to end the game, in which case I might be a little bit vulnerable to a war. If Gandin, for example, can get a military theory, with Churchill and things going, I just thought that the military theory, the military buildup would guarantee that I could defend against any shenanigans one of you might try. And also, none of the other cards on the row that I could take with my last civil action looked particularly appealing. I mean, the communism maybe, but I think I was hoping to get that second copy of Democracy instead for an HD government form. I wouldn't have enough science next turn for the communism anyway, even with the revolutionary idea. The efficient upgrade I would almost certainly not use, so at least the military buildup is a potentially useful card for me.
Yeah, I think the military buildup makes sense. Maybe in order to potentially threaten more military, I mean, the military buildup helps, of course, a lot with that as well. But maybe also the rockets could be considered, as maybe it could allow yourself to build a rocket and a warrior and threaten two outdated modern army tactics with air forces, which maybe could at the end make your military threat or the amount of strength that you can threaten potentially even a bit higher than the military buildup. On the other hand, maybe you could also threaten two outdated shock troops tactic or something like this, and the military buildup can just give you some guaranteed value, while the rockets maybe would just be a card to threaten a bit more strength. So I think it probably makes sense.
The rockets would also let me copy the defensive army, or maybe I could try to use entrenchments. But after building the movie too, I don't have many resources left. So I think even if I took the rockets, like if I were to build a rocket, that would also mean that I would lose out on a movie. And I mean, maybe at this point, like I have no hope of winning peacefully anyway. But I also don't have war in my hand anyway.
Yeah, so I think building the movie is definitely a must. Just maybe taking it in hand could be considered, but I think probably the military buildup is just a lot more useful in more variations than I just. The reason why I thought about it was that at my turn, when I thought about ending the age or not, I thought about what Gandin could do if he gets the second copy of Military Theory and declares a war. And then I think if he would have had the rockets in hand and threatened to go for two outdated modern army tactics, maybe that could have given you a higher strength potential, but at this point, during my turn, then also came to the conclusion that Gandin probably won't go for a war, and maybe the military buildup can just be nice for you also in a situation where you don't need to threaten amount of strength, but just maybe build one or two more units for impacts or for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair point. I didn't consider could I threaten outdated modern army tactics? So that's definitely an option I should have had in mind for my turn and like consciously denied. So yeah, that's definitely a great point.
No.
I discovered the developed territory, figured that was probably the event. I mean, the plunder, I thought that maybe I could potentially use it against you in particular because of your two military actions, and the developed territory was just not going to be ceded. So I kept my other cards, and I did end up drawing a modern army, actually, as well as a shock troops and an impact of competition.
Yeah. And during my turn, I could again have the option to seed the impact of government. But again, I will this time only develop one H3 technology. But I at this turn was faced with the decision whether I want to end the H or not, and I made the decision to prolong the game, as I felt like every additional turn will make my space flight even bigger. From the next turn on, will have relatively big culture production, hopefully bigger than yours and Gandin, or at least Gandin's. Well, you can maybe build more movies potentially, and so I was hoping that additional turns will be beneficial for me, but of course only if I don't get hit by a wall or anything at the end. So that was something that I really had to consider. But we can maybe take a look at it when I played my turn, but I felt like it's not that likely that Gandin will go for war, even if he has one available. First of all, I will start the turn with building a step of the Red Cross. And then this turn, I was very relieved that the military theory just barely made it onto the card row. So finally, I had a chance to increase my military actions, with Gandin again having increased his strength, being up to 47 strength. Yeah, I could have otherwise been quite in big trouble of defending against an aggression, so I was happy that one was now available. It would have been also a bit unfortunate if both of the copies would have stayed in the last 5 cards of the deck, but of course they could have also maybe been denied potentially, so I was now just happy that I had a chance to go for one. I can develop it. With that, I will get more draws this turn. I have another technology developed for the impact of technology. At this point, this impact will give me 20 points, while Gandin at the moment has 2 technologies from H3. You have only 2, so that will be a relatively strong impact, which is why I thought maybe I am not that much behind in culture actually, because I will get a big space flight. With the impact of tech, I'm already close. I have impact of government in hand. I was thinking that maybe I have actually relatively good chances. At least I was thinking that during this turn, and I just thought if I can now defend myself and maybe prolong the game, I maybe can, with the big space flight, be in a position to win the game at the end. But I had to think about what can Gandin do, because there are some military techs in the row. There's a copy of rockets, there's a copy of modern infantry, I have still a copy of riflemen in hand. If I want to keep it as an option, I have to develop it now. And I at the end made a decision to take the rockets just as a cheap technology. And I at the end thought about variations where I developed the rifleman, go for an upgrade, only have 2 instead of 4 corruption, and then maybe take the movies in hand, and then have the chance to go for movies at the next turn. But the problem about this is that after developing committing 6 signs for developing the rifleman, I will be at 5 plus 13 signs, so I will have 18 at the next turn, and I'm just 1 sign short to go for both movies and the engineering. And without the engineering, I just can't build that many movies. I don't remember my calculations precisely, but it just didn't work out that nicely. And so at the end, I made a decision, instead of going for the movies and instead of committing to Ralphman, I actually committed to the opera already, building 1 happy face, increasing my culture production already. I could have played it potentially a little bit safer and could have taken the modern infantry to have another infantry technology in hand instead of the rifleman that will soon be discarded. But I at the end came to the conclusion that I very likely don't need to take it, and instead took the multimedia. The reason for that is also that I thought about Gandin, who, when the military theory is revealed, which is likely the case, he can take it and develop it, build another air force, have steam magic castle to sacrifice, so that's quite threatening. But just at the beginning of the age, I drew both of the mechanized army tactics with the Colossus, so I know that Gandin doesn't have knowledge about those tactics, and with that, I can just threaten to build quite a bunch of rockets and reveal the mechanized army tactic, and that should hopefully be enough to not be the target of a war, especially because going for a war requires a lot of civil actions for Gandin, will maybe make it that he can't finish the Red Cross as easily. So I felt like threatening that is enough, and if I want to maybe threaten it, then taking the modern infantry could actually be seen as an indicator of me not having the tactic available. I don't have enough science to go for both rockets and modern infantry at the next turn, so I can't threaten something like modern army that easily. So I felt like it maybe makes it look like a little bit more that I actually can. I have the mechanized army tactic in hand. I thought that having the multimedias could be important because the movies will now be discarded. I have those operas, of course, but I thought maybe I will end up having enough resources to also build a multimedia now that I have 2 more turns left. And there's another copy of modern infantry coming that Gandin likely won't have enough civil actions to just deny that, so I might just also have still a chance to take a copy of modern infantry. And during all of those thoughts, I also looked at your position and also thought about your military potential. And with the cannons being discarded, I thought that maybe also Gandin, if he has a war, could maybe rather consider going against you with maybe the H2 card tactic in your hand being gone, which is why I had those thoughts about the rockets at the turn before. But I think that with Gandin delaying the Red Cross, if he maybe goes for a war, it is maybe at the end just too costly for him to execute it, even if he has one in hand. So at the end, I thought maybe I safe with ending the age, or not ending the age, having another turn to allow myself developing a lot of technologies, making the space flight very big, and from the next turn on, hopefully also having quite a bunch of culture production with being able to develop the engineering while having the operas, so I can from the next turn on build save some resources with the engineering, and then I was hoping that the amount of points that I will score together with impact of technology and government could give myself chances to maybe win the game at the end.
I mean, lots of options this turn, but yeah, the line you chose looks reasonable to me.
Yeah, there are probably a lot of variations that could also be considered the end, I just wanted to have the ability to, if, at the next turn, build culture urban buildings with the engineering, and was hoping that this line will also make me safe enough from war. I was very excited or interested to see what cards I will be drawing with my last age 3 draw. Something like Impact of Progress could be extremely strong, but just maybe a playable impact could be very nice, and I do get maybe a playable impact. I get the Impact of Industry, which is relatively equal at the moment. At this point, I was also more looking against Gandin, as I felt with him getting the red cross in the Democracy, he has now the better chances to win, and and against him the Impact of Industry is neutral. At the moment, it's still a bit better for you. And then I also have drawn the Impact of Happiness, which I was mainly happy to see in my hand, to have the knowledge about it being not in the deck, as at the moment my Impact of Happiness is looking quite bad. And I also considered taking the Bro Sports, but I felt like if I build a bunch of operas, I will also have some happy faces, and hopefully I won't have any uprising issues. Now it's Gandin's turn. He will seed, and now the Impact of Technology is revealed. I gained plus 12 against both of my opponents, so I was happy on how that impact worked out at the end. And Gandin will then play the reserves 2 that he still has, thanks to the age not ending, to finish the red cross. Get some additional culture thanks to that. Starts upgrading to computers, takes the efficient upgrade, the movies, and the fundamentalism, so takes a bunch of cards. And one reason to take all of those cards maybe could be actually to make it that both of the Bro Sports are on the discard spot during your turn. Maybe Gandin felt like those Bro Sports could help me for a lot of impacts as a cheap technology. So I think maybe that could be a part of his reason to just take all of those cards, as I think the fundamentalism is maybe something that he doesn't necessarily need for himself, so I think that could be part of the reason that is involved here.
Yeah, that's a great point. That makes a lot of sense to me.
And then, yeah, it's now also your second last turn.
Yep. So on my turn, I end up deciding to seed the Impact of Competition, which was a little bit of an interesting choice. Looking at my situation, it felt like odds definitely seemed pretty slim for me at this point, but I thought that if I had a chance, it would need to be basically by, I'd have to get a lot of help from the impacts against like one of my opponents. And you and Gandin, I think I counted up how much culture you would likely get from Einstein and Spaceflight, and basically you and Gandin looked pretty close to me at this point. But if we looked at the impacts I had, Impact of Progress would be much better for you. It would be about equal for me and Gandin. Impact of Colonies would be equal for me and Gandin, would be better for you. Impact of Competition would be, however, about equal for me and Gandin, but would be much better for me than for you. So basically, of the 3 impacts in my hand, Impact of Competition was the only one that benefited me over one of my opponents. At least to a significant extent. Impact of Colonies would give me plus 3 culture against Gandin, but Impact of Competition would give me more than that against you. So I thought that if I had so because of that, I decided to seed it, figuring that maybe if like the impacts on the deck were like particularly favorable to me or something, I might have a chance to finish ahead of you at least, even though the impact will also obviously help Gandin out a lot. Another reason to seed this turn is because I happen to be stronger than you this turn, which will also give me an advantage if the Impact of Strength is revealed, which indeed it is.
Yeah, and now it makes sense why Gandin built this Rifleman at the cost of destroying the religion early on, which was definitely a somewhat significant cost. So now we see the reason for that. And I was a little bit unhappy, of course. It's not a great impact, and I had some variations where I got a little bit stronger with going for Rifleman. So with that, the plus 14 points for Gandin against me, I again thought, it's now it will be a bit more difficult again to overtake him.
Yeah, so on my turn, unfortunately, I don't have enough rocks to build the movies. So instead I just increase my population to get out of corruption and take an urban growth and a democracy. Thanks to the urban growth, I'll have just enough rocks next turn to build 2 additional movies. And another thing I can do this turn, which is a little funny, is by just spending as swordsman, I can basically do that for free because that will let me get plus 10 rocks in the military buildup, which will then pay completely for building a 3rd air forces, as well as why I shipped the swordsman to Knights, which is kind of irrelevant. So basically, I just made the swordsman free. Doesn't even cost me a draw because it's age 4. So that's a little that's a little amusing to me
Yeah.
personally, and that now gives me a bit extra strength and helps with the impact of competition a little.
Yeah, no, so that makes sense preparing for the impact of competition, and it's always interesting with the military build-up and the wave of nationalism, and when there are some situations where you can maybe disband a unit and rebuild it, but you still gain a net gain of some resource out of it, so definitely a funny situation.
Right. And so I just discard the modern army because I mean it doesn't matter, but I can't use it, so
Yeah.
that's my turn.
Right, then at my turn, I have delayed seeding the impact of government by quite a bit, but as both impact of government and impact of industry will at least be seedable events for me, I wanted to start pushing. Also, I thought that I was afraid that the HT2 event in top could be some bad strength event or something, as you did maybe some effort into getting stronger, and it was seeded by you, so I was worried about that, but on the other hand, I kind of need to push anyway, and at least I have knowledge about what is on top, which also maybe is important, so that I have the knowledge one turn earlier and don't get surprised by anything. And so I just seeded the impact of government. I was hoping that maybe Gandin or maybe also you could destroy mine before the next turn, and then the impact of industry could get even a little bit better potentially. But I start with seeding the impact of government, hoping that Gandin maybe won't go for the military theory, instead for movies. The international agreement is revealed. I was happy to see it. Gandin can't really do a lot with it. Maybe he wants to go for an impact anyway, so it's just something that doesn't hit me. So I was happy about that, as I was fearing that maybe something like refugees or so could be coming. And then during my turn, I just mainly try to maximize the amount of culture that I can be scoring. I will increase my population. I will develop the engineering, build 2 operas, and then with the remaining 4 civil actions, I will increase my population again. As the population is unhappy, I can't really do that much with it. I have already reached my urban building limit for the theaters, and with that I just built another religion. It will score me 2 culture before the end of the game. I know that impact of happiness is not in the deck, but maybe impact of population could potentially be in there, which would now be a strong impact for me with having fixed my happy phases. And with building a religion, I have now exactly 16 resources for the spaceflight at the next turn, plus the 2 reserves for 8 resources, and with having the engineering, I can just build a multimedia at the next turn, so I thought that building this religion doesn't really remove any big options for me, and maybe it's just good to commit it to it already this turn to get the culture reduction going a little bit earlier. Maybe I could have also left myself a bit more flexible, but as I can't really build anything with the population, that doesn't give a happy face. Anyway, I just committed to the religion already this turn. And then for the last 2 civil actions, it's not really that important what I will be doing, because I have enough civil actions for my last turn with the engineering. So I just took the modern infantry. I can't take anything else, as I have the technologies already in hand. So I just play the reserves for resources, and then at the next turn I can finish the spaceflight, go for multimedia, and I was hoping that I maybe have, even after the impact of strength, some decent chances to still win the game, but it will be quite close. I will be at 104 culture after my turn. I will get 34 culture spaceflight, some more culture with Einstein, 16 culture production, 3 culture for seeding. But Gandin can potentially also build some movies, so I did some calculations and thought that it will be likely relatively close, but I thought that maybe I will have a slight lead even going to the final impacts. And while I myself don't have the best impacts in the deck after the impact of the technology is now out, I was hoping that I am also somewhat nicely prepared for a variety of impacts, and with that was hoping that I maybe have decent chances to potentially win the game, but also was worried, as there are definitely a bunch of impacts that also could be bad for me, like balance, agriculture, for example, and also some other ones. So I thought it could turn out to be quite close at the end, but I was slightly optimistic at this point of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to Gandin's last turn. He will actually take the international agreement. I don't think it really would have changed anything for his turn. He probably just doesn't have anything to do for his politics phase. I was a little bit worried about double aggression, so I was a bit relieved to see that he neither has a good impact to see it nor maybe an aggression to play. he will go for the military theory, which I again was a bit less happy to see, as it will help him for the impact of government. And then he makes an interesting decision. He will first of all build a religion, which makes sense for some additional culture. Now, after having destroyed it early on, he will rebuild it. And after destroying mine, which I was happy to see because I have the impact of industry in hand, he will build an additional lab and then go for 2 upgrades, so that he at the end has actually 4 labs with 3 computers available, putting him at 18 science production, which I found very interesting. And because it's a heavy, very big indicator that the impact of science might have been seeded by Gandin, which I would have found surprising, especially because he didn't push it this turn. Now he has an amount of science production that I can't really overtake at my turn if I also want to finish the space flight. So he is maybe guaranteed to win the impact of science if it is in the deck. Maybe it's also only a gamble by him, maybe thinking that I could have seeded impact of science. I thought maybe that could be possible, but I have only seeded 1 impact now from the impacted star in the deck, so I felt maybe he actually seeded the impact of science, but with me already committing to Einstein and computers very early, I was a bit surprised to see that maybe it could actually be that he has already at turn before, or maybe multiple turns before, committed to the impact of science, but with that play he actually finds a way to set up for it without with me having no chance to overtake the science production at the last turn.
Yeah, I actually looked into his turn, and taking the international agreement didn't make any difference to him, so he just didn't have anything else to do with the politics phase.
Yeah, so, and while I was a bit worried now about impact of science being revealed, building all of those labs maybe at least comes a bit of it at a cost of not going for something like movies for more cultural production. So even if the impact of science is coming, I was hoping that it's mostly fine. On the other hand, he allowed him to develop the military theory, which also will score him 3 additional points for the impact of government. So I was overall a bit worried about the turn.
As for my turn, I didn't really want to seed either of the impacts because, as I said, it was basically equal for me with Gandin and would help you a lot. Instead, I thought I would try a plunder against you, just in case it worked out. There's no cost to me at this point, but you are able to defend, obviously.
Yeah.
And so after that, I just went with my additional plan of playing Democracy and building 2 movies. I do have to decide what to destroy to put into movies, especially since I know Impact of Competition is in the deck. I think what I end up doing is I do destroy a mine to put into movies, but I also disband a unit. I wanted to leave myself at 6 resource production in case of an impact of balance in the deck. And so I thought that preparing for that and also a potential impact of industry was more important than the -1 I would lose from disbanding one of my knights to put into movies. And that's all I can do.
Yeah, so now in your last turn, you're really building up a lot of cultural production. And I think it makes sense to stay prepared for balance, and also the impact of industry will now be seeded by me. And yeah,
that's it.
Then that is also, I will seed the impact of industry now, and after Gandin has destroyed his mine, it will be with seeding included +5 points against him, unless there's an impact reveal that I would improve during my turn, but I definitely wanted to push. When we take a look at the overview, Gandin is at this point definitely the opponent that I have been looking towards, as I, with finishing the space flight, will be quite ahead of you, and was hoping that that I should be well enough prepared for impacts that I can keep the lead. And so I see the impact of industry into the deck, and there's indeed the impact of science revealed. So Gandin relatively early committed to seeding this impact, which I was definitely a bit surprised to see, but he also found a way to at the end win it and actually get +7 points out of the impact against me and +14 against you. The turn was relatively clear for me, even though maybe I should have at least considered one particular option. But I can develop 2 technologies for the spaceflight. I can then disband a warrior, and I have just enough resource to build 1 multimedia and finish the spaceflight for 34 points, so quite a big spaceflight. And then I have still the patriotism in hand, which I can use to maneuver 1 warrior into knight to get a potential point for the impact of competition. Sadly, I'm missing 1 resource to put maybe a warrior into modern infantry. So I do think that turn just is very straightforward, increasing my culture production with the multimedia, finishing the spaceflight. I think that I maybe at least could have considered would be something like building a 3rd farm, which gives me points for impact of balance and impact of agriculture, which both could be impacts that likely could have been seeded by both you and Gandin, even though Gandin did destroy the mine, which maybe could be an indicator against something like balance. But the multimedia just gives me 3 safe culture, gives me 2 for variety, 3 for architecture, all impacts that could potentially be in the deck as well. Building the farm would so allow me to maybe upgrade this warrior to modern infantry, so I would also be a bit better set up for impact of competition. So I think that I maybe at least should have considered some different lines, but at the end it's just the line that gives me the most safe culture and also prepares me for some impact. So I think it makes sense to go for that play at the end. And
yeah, I agree.
and then we have this. We can take a look at the situation before the final impacts, and we can see it is quite close between me and Gandin. I have 170 culture, Gandin has 167. My impacts are not that big, but give me a slight advantage over Gandin. I expected that or suspected that the impact of science was a seed by Gandin, meaning at this point there's 1 impact from Gandin and 2 from you in the deck, which with that, I thought it could get really close, but I had some hopes because I thought I am relatively nicely prepared for a bunch of impacts. But
Yeah, and
felt
I felt pretty. Mm,
no, no. But
but
no, it felt like it could get really close now between me and Gandin. The first impact that we see is the impact of agriculture, an impact that is slightly better for both Gandin and you than me. So Gandin is now only 1 point behind me. Then we have the impact of government. It was seeded by me, sadly with Gandin developing the military theory. That impact only gives me +1 against him, but at least it means that I am now 2 culture again in the lead. Then we have the impact of competition, which was seeded by you, which means that Gandin can overtake me for now in the standings, but it also makes it that you can catch up some points towards me. And then we have the impact of industry. That was my seed, so now I'm again 1 point behind Gandin, so a really tight and close race, very relatively close impacts revealed so far. Now there's 1 unknown impact left, and I was very excited, but also at that point a bit worried, as my impacts were already out. I had now to rely on one of either your or Gandin's seed to maybe overtake Gandin again, and the last impact is the impact of wonders, which is also a very close one and is at the end sadly just not enough to overtake Gandin for me, meaning that at the end I will end up 2 culture behind him, and Gandin is able to win the game with 229 points. So it was quite an exciting finish, sadly not with the ideal outcome for me, but still I was quite excited when I looked at those final impacts.
I can imagine.
Yeah, at the end you were a little bit behind with the culture, but I still think that at least for the early parts of H3 it was a very tight race, and then maybe I think what maybe made a difference that you fell a little bit behind was just that with the Ravages of Time being revealed and Gandin being the one who fixed his H1 government form or upgraded it to an H3 government form, plus him getting a wonder with the Red Cross, while you at the end not being able to take one, not maybe having a nice opportunity to do so, just made it that Gandin pulled a little bit ahead of you, while I think at the beginning of H3 it was quite tight or extremely close between the two of you, while my position was maybe just a bit different and dependent on if I can survive and not be punished by some happy face related events or maybe aggressions in militaries or
Yeah, I agree with that. That turn where Gandin got the democracy and then Churchill and got his military up, I think that turn pretty much won Gandin the game. I think that was also the turn that he took computers, so that might have been the turn when he ceded the impact of science.
yeah.
Yeah. So that turn basically won him the game. I think that, as mentioned previously, I did feel that I was in a pretty good position at the start of H3, but I probably, maybe some unfortunate things happened where Gandin got the democracy first and got the Red Cross and stuff like that. But I also could have played it differently. I could have, taken more risks with my military to build the movies earlier. And if I had done that, then I would have had maybe like an extra 20 or 25 culture and at least been able to compete better with you two at the end of the game. So Yeah, I think it wasn't just luck, and there were definitely some turns, that I could have played differently. Also, earlier in Age 2, upgrading, delaying the food upgrades that much definitely changed the game a lot. So, a lot of stuff that I could have done differently. Very interesting game to look back on and analyze, though.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting game, also a special one for me, as I went very military heavy in the early game, and was also quite worried going into H2 that maybe I just don't get a nice payoff. But I do think my early H2 draws were quite nice, especially drawing the war and or having the opportunity to go for Napoleon really made it that I could capitalize on the strength push, and then found a way with the Republic to follow up with a peaceful build, and then actually transitioning into a very strong economy during H3. So interesting to see how quickly that can change, maybe with the right cards being available during H2. And yeah, so at the end, I think quite an interesting game to analyze. I think very well played by all involved. Congratulations to Gandin for just pulling that one off with a very nice impact of science play, as it was definitely bold play, but also one that definitely paid off at the end to commit to that impact early against Einstein, but he made it work, and with that got some additional points out of it. So yeah, a very tight and exciting game. And now, before we are coming to the end of the video, we can maybe take a short look at standings of the three-player games.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so here we can see the standings that are in the group after all the three-player games have finished. All the players have now the same amount of games finished, and it is quite a close. Still quite close, especially between Gandin and Fiantric, who have 16 and 15 points. I'm sadly now a bit behind after not having managed to win any of the three-player games. I'm at 11 points, and you, after this game, you are at 6 points. So for both of us, it's not looking ideal in the standings. I think for you at this point, even if you win all of the two-player games, you would be at 18 points, but as both Gandin and Fiantric will get one win, I guess maybe if there's a tie, I don't know if there is a scenario for you to still win the group, but if it is, it's definitely still, it's looking quite
Yeah.
dim at this
If it's a
point.
if it's a tie, they'll probably get 2.5 points, I think. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
No,
Or
I
I
think
would
I
assume.
think I think it's 2 points each because 4 points I think is the amount for the two-player games. So
Okay.
I think the points will be shared, but I don't know if that because then they both need to lose against me, meaning I would then be at 19 points. So now at this point,
Uh,
it's sadly for you there are no chances any longer to win the group. I think you had some rough games with the four-player game and some military-heavy games. Definitely, some things went unfortunate for you. I also think in the current game that we covered, getting hit by the spy, 5 science swing at this point of the game is definitely very relevant and could have maybe left you in a lot better position. So some unfortunate games for you. But yeah, I think you still showed off some well-played games.
yeah, thank you. Definitely going over them showed me. I mean, that four-player game obviously, taught me a strong lesson about, making sure to set yourself up sufficiently militarily. And I think I've gone over, and this game has shown me some things I can play differently. So definitely some mistaken turns that I played. I think I'm still relatively new. I think competitive through the ages. Only been playing it for a little less than a year at this point. This is my first World Championships. This is you're the strongest player I've played in this time setting. I played Martin Pusher, I think one time in Quick and Dirty, but yeah, so definitely a valuable experience for me. And even though it didn't go the way I might have wanted, I'm glad I had it, and I feel that by playing through this and then going over and analyzing my mistakes, I should be able to become a lot stronger for future rounds.
Yeah, I think you're definitely playing very well for being very new to the game still. So I think some very reasonable turns, also some nice and coherent analysis that you are doing today, but also in your videos. And
Thank you.
yeah, and as for me, I still have chances to finish first in the group, but sadly, after the very tight finish where I at the end finished second, I am not longer able to guarantee being able to or win the group just by my own. If I manage to win all of the two-player games, then it is a situation where there is a two-player game between Gandin and Fiandrik, and whoever wins that is not allowed to also win against you. Because then,
Right.
even when I win all of the two-player games, that would mean that either Gandin or Fiandrik would then be able to win the group. So I don't have it in my own hands any longer, but I still have chances. And with that, of course, I will try my best to try my best to win the remaining two-player games. And of course, I wish very good luck for you for your games against Gandin and Fiandrik. With um,
Maybe not. Maybe not last one.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. With of course, without any thoughts for myself involved. Yeah.
Of course, just pure altruism.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, but with that, it's still exciting. It's not a position that I would like myself to see in. I of course would prefer to be in a position where I just can win the group when I win all of my games and not be dependent on some results where I'm not involved. But at least I still have some hopes, and with that, I will try my best to win the remaining two-player games. And yeah, I hope you're all looking forward to seeing those. It will remain very exciting, a very tough and exciting first World Championship stage for me so far. And yeah, with that, I think
Yeah.
we are at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, one last thing I'd like to say. Well, first of all, good luck to you in your remaining games. And second, when I first started playing, I watched a ton of your videos, and they really helped me out a lot to sort of jumpstart my skills and learn a lot about the game while I was still new. So it was really fun and really nice to have an opportunity to dual commentate with you. So thanks a lot for offering to do this.
Yeah, I'm definitely very, very happy. So thanks for your kind words. I'm always very happy to hear when some players say that the videos help them improving. As yeah, that's definitely is one of the reasons why I'm doing them and all why why I feel it's worth it doing them. So thanks for those words, and also thanks for your time and to be willing to do this double commentary video. I do think it was very interesting hearing your thoughts, hearing both of our thoughts in a three-player game. I hope it was interesting for the viewers. Again, it's quite a long video, so thanks to all of those who made it so far in the video. I hope it was interesting for all of you. And yeah, then thanks for being part of this. Good luck for your remaining games, also for all the games that you will be having after that stage is over. And yeah, then thanks for participating. My concentration is going on very low levels at this point.
Thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, so yeah, let's end it with this. Thanks for watching, everyone, and then see you in the next video. Goodbye.